Chapter 422. Now that things had developed to this point, the guild master of the munitions factory did not dare to persist. Now that things had developed to this point, the entire guild was in trouble. Many people did not even know the reason, and the guild channel was filled with complaints. The guild master had no choice but to compromise and confess the truth to the other guild masters. He did not obtain the resurrection equipment at all, and that the staff was a fake. At this time, the guild master did not personally participate in the encirclement. At this time, they were still drinking in the tavern on the beach. They did not have to show up. Just a casual meeting behind the scenes could decide the fate of countless players. This feeling was very pleasing to them. At this time, everyone received the news at the same time, and could not help but be stunned. They could understand the actions of the guild master of the munitions factory. Although they all condemned him for being short-sighted, everyone broke out in a cold sweat. This was because if this situation happened to their own guild, it was very likely that they would make the same decision. Then, it would be their own guild that would suffer the disaster. All the guild masters rejoiced at this, and at the same time, their expectations for the resurrection equipment were ignited. At this time, the guild master of Green Narrow Shadow suddenly said coldly, "Now that you say it's not. Do you think we are all idiots?" When the guild masters heard this, they immediately felt that it made sense. It was very likely that the guy from the munitions factory was bluffing them. Then they heard Narrow Shadow continue to instigate. "We must not let him go. Yes. Kill this son of a bitch." The guild masters were furious. At this time, the emotions of the guild masters were not calm, and with the addition of the alcohol, it was very easy for them to be agitated. Narrow Shadow looked at the guild masters and cursed as he once again ordered his own guild to continue the hunt. An imperceptible smile flashed across the corner of his mouth. At the same time, he also sent out a few messages. "Move quickly. Otherwise, we won't be able to hide it anymore." Although the guild masters appeared to be very agitated, Narrow Shadow believed that there must be more shrewd guild masters among them who were preparing for a backup plan. They continued to chase after the people from the munitions factory, while continuing to search for the whereabouts of Jian Nan and the others. The area outside of Waterside City was not large, and the field of vision was wide. It was not suitable for a secret operation. If he did not hurry, it was very likely that the plan that he had been implementing would fall short. On the beach outside the city, Gu Fei was still running in circles. That group of people had long since been left behind by him. As he ran, the scene in front of him was revealed layer by layer. Finally, on the seemingly endless beach, Gu Fei saw a group of people in the distance. There weren't many of them, only about 5 or 6. Gu Fei knew that he had finally met the people he was looking for. Jian Nan Yu and his group left the city gate and ran towards the coordinates of their ship. Unfortunately, with a warrior and a priest in the party, their speed was not much faster. However, the view of the beach was wide. The few of them kept looking around, but they did not find anything unusual. At this time, they could already see the waves at the coordinates of the ship. Their hearts surged. Glue suddenly pointed to the front and shouted, "A person is running over there?" Alone? Jian Nenyu didn't have the eagle eyes, so he couldn't see clearly. Now that victory was right in front of him, he didn't have the mood to think about it. He just urged everyone to hurry up. Glue kept staring at the figure. The more he looked, the more familiar and scary he felt. Finally he roared, "Damn it, it's a video mage. This brat is really haunting us." Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. "But he's only one person," Fire Burning Clothes said. Everyone's faces suddenly showed joy. Because of the collaboration between Gu Fei and 100 Era's strategist, they had some scruples. If it was just one person, Jian Nanyu believed that with the cooperation of their elite team, there was no one in the game who could challenge them alone. "Keep going. If he comes over, take care of him," Jian Nanyu said. "He escaped from that street. It's impossible that he doesn't have PK points on him, right? If he's lucky, maybe he'll drop his equipment." Everyone began to imagine a beautiful future. As the 6 walked, they paid attention to Gu Fei's movements. Jian Nanyu sent a message to Blackwater, and after confirming his existence, he informed them to be completely prepared for battle. Gu Fei approached quickly. In fact, he was already in the archer's attack range, but Glue didn't move. They knew that this kind of attack was meaningless against Gu Fei. They waited patiently, waiting for Gu Fei to get close enough. They would first cut off his retreat, and then slowly take care of him. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. The few of them were secretly counting the distance between them and Gu Fei, constantly exchanging glances with each other. They had already figured out a good way to run, and their hands were ready to use their skills. Just when they had gathered all their strength, Gu Fei suddenly stopped in his tracks. He didn't make a move. He just raised his hand and pointed behind the 6 of them, signaling them. Don't be fooled. Jian Nenyu thought that this was Gu Fei's trick to divert their attention. Perhaps when they turned around, Gu Fei's attack would follow. However, Blackwater, who was slowly approaching Gu Fei from the other side in stealth, also saw the scene behind Jian Nanyu's group. He immediately sent a message in shock. Dinan behind you. It was impossible for Jian Nanyu to suspect his own brother. He quickly turned around and saw a group of men and horses charging at them at the fastest speed on the coastline. The archers in the front row had already set up their bows and arrows. They would be able to attack in a few steps. How is this possible? Jian Nanyu was shocked. He wasn't surprised to see Gu Fei here. After all, Gu Fei wasn't the target of his fake staff strategy. However, the group in front of him was obviously from the guild. They should be fighting each other now. Even if they reacted quickly, they shouldn't be able to organize their people so quickly. Their opponents were lined up neatly and had meticulously assigned classes. It was obvious that they had prepared well in advance. Not only did it mean that their opponents didn't fall for the trap, but they also seemed to have known their movements all along. They had waited patiently until now to make their move. A whistling sound. The leader of the other side had already fired a sniper shot at Jian Nanyu. Jian Nanyu blocked the arrow with his shield. At the same time, he heard the enemy shout, "Brother Jian Nan, you're really vicious. How many people's levels did you trick with a fake staff? It seems like the munitions factory is done for because of your fake staff." Southern Azure Sword put down his shield and looked at the newcomer. He recognized him as the vice president of Green Narrow Guild, Willow Weijian. In Waterside City, he was the number 2 archer, second only to Glue. However, now that Glue had dropped a level, he had become the number 1 archer in Waterside City. But it seems like I didn't trick you, Jian Nanyu said perfunctorily. He was extremely anxious in his heart. There was a huge group of people in front of them, and a powerful magician like Gu Fei behind them. Escaping was a problem. Even if they forced their way onto the boat, the magicians would just bombard them. It went without saying that Willow Weijian was not worried about it. He smiled after hearing Jian Nanyu's words. That's why we're very grateful for Brother Rennie's help. What? Hua Rennie was confused and angry. He felt that the enemy was trying to drive a wedge between them. Jian Nanyu thought so too. However, 2 seconds later, he suddenly realized what was going on. You guys are following him? Jian Nanyu finally realized what was going on. It was indeed because of Hua Rennie, and Hua Rennie had no idea what was going on. Hua Rennie was the only one who had died in the battle on the street. He did not encounter any trouble when he came out from the resurrection point. Jian Nanyu and the others initially thought that the enemy was only guarding the resurrection point to prevent them from going offline. However, they realized that the enemy was a lot more scheming than that. When Hua Rennie was killed, Green Narrow Guild was the only guild that was chasing after them. After he was resurrected, the enemy pretended not to notice them, but they were actually following them in the dark. Initially, the 7 of them had decided to split up. However, Hua Rennie had already predicted that the 7 of them would meet up sooner or later. Even if they weren't in the city, they would still be on the same boat when they left Linshui City. Therefore, as long as they followed Hua Rennie, they would eventually be able to find the other 6. The rendezvous was earlier than they had expected. At the west gate of Linshui City, the 6 of them had put on a show. They managed to fool everyone. But they could not fool Green Narrow Guild, which was following them secretly. However, they still maintained their silence. They were beating Jian Nan at his own game, just like the munitions factory. They were trying to trick Jian Nanyu and the others into escaping, but they were actually waiting for the perfect opportunity to deal a fatal blow to them. They were waiting for Jian Nanyu and the others to meet up. Naturally, it was when they were about to leave Linshui City. Green Narrow Guild's plan was very bold. They knew about the existence of the resurrection equipment on Jian Nanyu and the others. Their goal was to capture all of them in one fell swoop. This was the only way to ensure that nothing went wrong. Jian Nanyu believed that there were definitely Green Narrow Guild members lying in ambush at all the resurrection points. No matter which of the 6 of them was sacrificed to resurrect, they would have to endure an endless cycle of reincarnation until the other party dropped the Staff of Resurrection. Green Narrow Shadow, the guild leader of Green Narrow Guild, had become the initiator of the munitions factory's attack. He had even gathered all the guild leaders together to monitor their actions. However, his guild had been secretly taking action against the 7 of them. When Jian Nanyu realized this, he was filled with regret. Now that they were being attacked from both the front and the back, there was no point in compromising. They could only fight with all their might. After the 7 of them exchanged glances, Jian Nanyu saw the same determination in everyone's eyes. The attack of Willow Reed Arrow's team arrived at this moment. The 7 of them dodged and Jian Nanyu and Flaming Cloak's combined attack quickly reappeared. Jian Nanyu provided cover while Flaming Cloak, Fire Beacon City, and Flaming Tree Thousand Layers Flames quickly created a fire barrier. "Get on the boat!" Glue roared. On the other side, the 2 of them had worked together to gain some time. He launched an attack at Gu Fei, hoping to delay him. In the end, Gu Fei easily dodged his attack. For a moment, Glue felt that his existence was extremely petty, as if he could not help at all. Jian Nanyu and the others quickly retreated to the boat, while paying attention to Gu Fei's actions. What surprised them was that Gu Fei did not do anything to stop them from leaving. Chapter 423. The 7 of them stared at the motionless Gu Fei in disbelief while they jumped into the prepared boats. "You guys go first." Jian Nanyu and Flaming Cloak stayed behind and continued to light fires. Even though the fiery robed man had died twice, Fire Beacon City was a skill from his staff, so it was not weakened at all. On the other hand, his skill cooldowns were still the same. Both Firewall and Sea of Fire were his weapons to slow down the enemy. However, if the enemy came prepared, then it would be a joke if the 7 of them could escape so easily. The enemy's ranged classes were also crazily attacking. No matter how strong Flaming Cloak and Jian Nanyu were, they couldn't take so many attacks at once. How could they have the time to set up an interception? Jian Nanyu swung his shield as if he had finally made up his mind. He stared at the expressionless Gu Fei, and suddenly took out an item from his pocket. He threw it over and said, "This is half. I'll pay you the other half after we're done." Gu Fei leisurely opened the money pouch to take a look, then sent a message to the elite squad. "Received half." "Then let's do it," the Han family young master said. Aside from Jian Nanyu, the other 6 watched an unbelievable scene unfold in front of them. Gu Fei quickly unsheathed his sword and a fiery light descended from the sky. The members of the Green Narrow Guild suffered heavy casualties from the spell, so they were naturally shocked. It wasn't that they couldn't dodge the spell attack, but rather, with such an absolute advantage, no one would care about a spell hitting them. Only in an evenly matched battle would players care about the gains and losses of each attack. The Green Narrow Guild paid the price for their boldness. They didn't expect this unremarkable mage to be such a ruthless character. More importantly, they saw Glue attacking this mage. The enemy of an enemy was naturally a friend. Who would have thought that this mage would attack them, and in such an unrestrained manner? What's going on? Let alone Green Narrow's guild. Even the other 6 people in the group of 7 didn't understand what was going on. They only saw South Azure Blade toss a bag of money over, as if he had reached some kind of agreement with Gu Fei. "We'll talk about it later. Everyone retreat." Jian Nanyu gritted his teeth as he spoke. Clearly, he was struggling to cooperate with Gu Fei. Wall of electricity. Gu Fei pointed his sword horizontally and created another barrier around Fire Beacon City. The Fiery Cloak's Fire Beacon City had a very short cooldown, so it could be used a second time. It immediately cooperated with Gu Fei's wall of electricity and unleashed another one. 2 Fire Beacon Cities and 1 electric wall combined into one on this small beach like the Great Wall. Jian Nan's group of 7 couldn't care less about anything else. They took this opportunity to quickly climb onto the small boat that they had prepared. The melee players of Green Narrow Guild were trying their best to get around the Great Wall. As for the ranged players, the 7 of them had already run out of the mage's attack range. The archer's attacks were blocked by Jian Nan with his shield, while Gu Fei jumped forward and slashed down a large number of them. Jian Nan deeply stared at Gu Fei. The two sides had indeed reached an agreement, but at this time, with the hatred between the two sides, Jian Nan was very suspicious that Gu Fei would not put in the effort. He was also out of ideas, so he took out his money and gambled. He didn't expect Gu Fei to be so trustworthy and cover their retreat. It could be said that he did his best. For example, if Gu Fei didn't shoot down a portion of the arrows, it was hard to say if Jian Nan's group of 7 would have been able to leave safely. The people of Green Narrow Guild didn't expect for someone to appear out of nowhere and ruin their meticulous preparations. They were extremely depressed as they watched the 7 of them board the boat and leave. At this time, an arrow came whistling through the air like a gust of wind. The player who was hit by the arrow immediately turned into a strand of white light. The current number 1 archer of Waterfront City, Willow Arrow, turned pale with fright. He knew that another top expert had arrived. He looked towards the direction of the arrow and saw an archer fiercely shooting at them. Although it was only one person, the archer specifically targeted the classes with the lowest health. 1 arrow heavily injured them, and 2 arrows killed them. For a moment, they were in a panic. Willow Arrow was extremely confused. He had never heard that Jian Nan's group of 7 had such top helpers. Why did 2 of them suddenly appear? At this time, some of the melee players had already gone around the Great Wall. They didn't have the heart to pay attention to these unnecessary attacks. They were focused on pouncing towards Jian Nan's group of 7. Thus, they saw Gu Fei step forward and block their path. When the opponents saw that a mage actually dared to come out and act so arrogantly as a human wall, they were furious. They roared and pounced. Gu Fei didn't retreat or dodge. He stepped forward to meet them, his body already spinning like a top. He held the dark streak horizontally in his hand as he spun and pushed it forward. When his right arm rotated to its limit, it actually passed to his left hand and continued to push forward. Gu Fei used dual flame flash. After combining the special footwork of turning and the technique of switching weapons to hands, his efficiency greatly increased. He actually completed 2.5 revolutions, and his attack range reached a ridiculous 900 degrees. The speed of the attack was even more unbelievable. To the bystanders, it seemed like only a blink of an eye, but the flames had already circled 2.5 times, killing and injuring many of the surrounding players. Not only did this attack require a high level of martial arts, but it also contained the skills of an online game. When the sword was switched from the right hand to the left hand, it needed to quickly set the left hand as the main and the right hand as the support. Afterwards, when the left hand returned to the right hand, it needed to be set again. Only by repeating this many times could the high damage be sustained. This was even more troublesome for Gu Fei. He had secretly practiced a lot in order to reach this level in one go. The flames burned out, and the weaker players had long since died. Those who could withstand this attack weren't far from death, and their faces were ashen. Gu Fei no longer had any magic power, but standing in the crowd, no one dared to approach him. Wandering Sword and the others had already left the shore on their 2 boats. When they turned around and saw this scene, they were dumbfounded. This was especially true for the Flaming Cloak. It was beyond his imagination that a mere dual flame flash could reach such a level. He took out his staff and chanted a dual flame flash to test it out, but the flames were extinguished after only 60 degrees. 900 degrees. This was 15 times what he could do. Flaming Clothes felt his body go weak. Wielding the dark streak sword, Gu Fei looked back. Wandering Sword and the others were already quite a distance away from the shore. He hurriedly reminded the players around him. "What are you waiting for? Chase after them." After he finished speaking, he calmly walked out of the crowd without looking sideways, turned around, and once again assumed the expressionless face of a passerby. "Chase after them." The members of Green Narrow Guild shouted as if to remind themselves. Everyone ignored Gu Fei and charged towards the shore while yelling and shouting. However, the boats were already far away, and the mages couldn't hit them. The archers' attacks were no longer a threat with Wandering Sword's shield and the two priests' crazy healing. Flustered and exasperated, Lu Weijian reported the situation to Narrow Shadow. When he looked up, he saw his own troops coming from the other direction. He felt even more depressed. If they had arrived a little earlier, they wouldn't have ended up like this. He looked at the culprit, Gu Fei. He had already turned around, and was about to leave as if nothing had happened. Lu Weijian was furious and shouted, "Stop!" Gu Fei stopped in his tracks and turned around. His eyes were extremely cold. Lu Weijian suddenly felt his scalp go numb. He didn't know where to start. He looked at his group of brothers, and saw them looking at him with hidden bitterness. They seemed to be very dissatisfied with him provoking this fiend. No matter what, he had already shouted. Lu Weijian was about to say something when he saw Gu Fei turn around and run for his life. "Fuck!" everyone exclaimed. Running away meant that he was guilty. This fellow had acted so cool and wiped out two of their teams with a single move. However, looking at his current actions, they finally understood that Gu Fei was actually very wary of them. "Fuck, don't run. Chase after him." Immediately, the group became courageous. Some of them waved their weapons and chased after him. Lu Weijian was also shocked speechless by Gu Fei's actions. However, he had already received the instructions from Narrow Shadow, so he didn't lose his cool. He stopped everyone from acting rashly and directed them to the task at hand. "Quick, find a boat and chase after Jian Nanyu." Gu Fei turned around and saw that the other party didn't seem to be bothering him. He relaxed and said in the mercenary channel, "I got the money and sent him away. What are you trying to do?" "Come to the coordinates XXX, Han family young master replied. Gu Fei quickly moved in that direction. "Bring Yutian with you." Han family young master suddenly reminded him. Gu Fei picked up Yutian Shenming, who was standing on the beach in a daze. The two of them rushed to the coordinates given by Han family young master. The coordinates were also on the coast. Two boats were already prepared. Sword Demon, Han family young master, Brother Yu, and Unscathed in Battle were all on the boat. There were also two boat owners. "Hurry up and get on the boat!" Brother Yu shouted at the two of them. Gu Fei and Yutian Shenming boarded one boat each. The boat owner seemed to have been informed and immediately drove the boat away from the coast. "What the hell is going on? Where are we going?" Gu Fei was about to attack Jian Nanyu and the others when he was on the coast, but he suddenly received a message from Han family young master, saying that they had made a deal with Jian Nanyu. He wanted to get the money first. Gu Fei was so busy this time because he wanted to help Bai Shijinglu and earn money. At the same time, he was also thinking about the income from killing Jian Nanyu. However, Han family young master said that he had already made arrangements, so Gu Fei didn't ask anymore. Hence, there was the scene of Jian Nanyu paying and Gu Fei helping him out. "I'm going after Jian Nanyu," Sword Demon answered. "Bai Shi is still in the city." Gu Fei quickly said. "There's no time to wait." Han family young master, who was standing at the bow, turned around and pointed in a direction. He ordered the two boat owners, "Go that way." "You have this thing too?" Gu Fei suddenly noticed the thing in Han family young master's hand, and was surprised. "I borrowed it," Han family young master said. "Boundless, boundless, boundless?" Gu Fei asked. "Hey, you know it's her?" Han family young master said. "I saw her get it with my own eyes," Gu Fei said. "Really?" Han family young master's eyes lit up. "What mission did you get it from?" Chapter 424. Gu Fei told them about how he had killed 30 PK points at sea and how the system guards had chased him to the surface. Han family young master nodded and asked, "Have you killed 30 PK points?" "No." Gu Fei answered with a dark expression. Gu Fei knew that he didn't say that out of concern for his comrade. He probably wanted Gu Fei to get another 30 PK points to lure out a fleet, and then he could get a pair of binoculars. "Keep it up," Han family young master urged him, and then stood at the bow of the ship with the binoculars to monitor the movements of Jian Nanyu's two ships. This was the truth that the elite group knew the situation very well even though they didn't show their faces. It was because of this pair of binoculars. The players of Eternal Life Among Flowers were tirelessly running along the shore and flipping over haystacks. After they heard about the commotion at the West Gate, they also came out of the West Gate. Using their binoculars, they looked around the vast beach and easily found the movements of so many people. Han family young master didn't know how Green Narrow Guild had their eyes on Jian Nanyu. He only knew that they could successfully intercept him, so he asked Brother Yu to negotiate with Jian Nanyu and inform him that if he needed help he could make such a deal. At that time, Jian Nanyu didn't know that he had fallen into Green Narrow Guild's trap. He thought that the people from Child Elite Group were playing a trick, or trying to delay them, or trying to confuse them, or trying to find out where they were. In any case, Jian Nanyu didn't care. In the end he was pincered by Green Narrow Guild and Gu Fei. Green Narrow Guild attacked fiercely, but Gu Fei didn't do anything. Jian Nanyu had no choice but to compromise. He didn't trust the Child Elite Group, but he had no way out at that time. He could only try as much as he could, and he didn't expect that he would be cured in the end. At this time they were sailing on the water. Jian Nanyu still had doubts about this matter. He asked Glue to pay attention to the surroundings carefully. Glue looked left and right with its eagle eyes, but found nothing. Jian Nanyu was no longer worried about Green Narrow's guild. How could it be so easy to form a fleet in a hurry? On the other hand, Jian Nanyu suspected that the Child Elite Group would be lying in ambush. Now that the Glue did not discover anything, Jian Nanyu felt slightly relieved. He personally steered the boat diagonally across the water. In short, he did not want anyone to discover their route. Little did he know that the Han family young master had been watching them from afar with a pair of binoculars. As for him, it was impossible for him to see the Child Elite Group with the eagle eyes of an archer. The two teams each took 2 small boats and chased each other on the water. Ask him when he's going to pay the other half. The Han family young master used his binoculars to monitor Jian Nanyu and the others while asking his brother Yu about this issue. When the others heard this, they could not help but want to stand on Jian Nanyu's side. This guy was too vicious. On the way, the young master of the Han family had already explained the purpose of his arrangements. From the beginning he planned to force Jian Nanyu out of Linshui City until they settled down in the next main city. Only then would he continue to pursue and kill Jian Nanyu. Only then would they be able to control the resurrection point again and again. It would not fall into the hands of Green Narrow's guild, or other guilds like what happened in Linshui City. After listening to this plan, everyone finally understood that the Han family young master had his eyes on the resurrection equipment. However, the Han family young master quickly promised that he would not keep the equipment for himself after it was dropped. He would sell it and split the money with everyone. Only then did everyone maintain their enthusiasm. At this moment, Gu Fei was also very busy. On one hand, he told 100 Era's Jingluan that Jian Nanyu and the others had successfully escaped. On the other hand, he told Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and Boundless Meng to stop being busy. The situation was already under control. In the end, the person who felt the most sorry was Fireball. At this moment, Fireball was still pitifully sitting in the tavern on the beach, anxiously waiting for Gu Fei to come back and help him clean up his PK. However, Gu Fei had already left Linshui City. In the end, he could only send a message to Fireball to hurry up and leave Linshui City. In the blink of an eye, everyone had already drifted on the water for half an hour. Apart from the Han family young master, who was still standing straight at the bow of the boat with his binoculars, the other 5 were bored to death. Yutian Shenming was holding a bow and shooting fish. Unscathed in battle, and the boat owner were discussing the technique of rowing the boat. Brother Yu was holding his little notebook and researching something. Sword Demon was sitting in the middle of the boat and meditating. Unknowingly, the dagger in his right hand had been clamped between his fingers like a cigarette. He did not even realize it. At first, Gu Fei kept looking at the Sword Demon. He wanted to see when he would put the dagger in his mouth again. In the end, he did not get what he wanted even after looking at him for a long time. The Sword Demon maintained this posture while he was deep in thought. In the end, with nothing else to do, he could only look for the third person on the boat besides the Han family young master and the Sword Demon to chat with. "Where are we going?" Gu Fei asked. He felt that the boat owner should be more familiar with the waterways of Linshui City. "Looking at this direction, I'm not too sure." The boat owner shook his head. Just as he finished speaking, the Han family young master gave another instruction. A little more to the left. The boat owner seemed to have suddenly realized something and said to Gu Fei, "If we continue to turn left, it looks like we're going to Xiaoyu City." What city? Gu Fei thought that the answer was either Sunset City or Shady Forest City. He did not expect that there was a third main city near Linshui City. Xiaoyu City, the boat owner said again. What city? This time, the one who asked this question was the Han family young master, who was standing at the bow. Obviously, he was also very surprised by this answer. The boat owner helplessly wanted to say it for the third time, but the Han family young master had already shouted to Brother Yu on the other boat. "Brother Yu, there is another main city here. Do you know? Is there?" Brother Yu was also surprised. "The waterways only connect to Shady Forest City and Sunset City. I've checked." The boat owner also laughed. It's true that the waterways only connect to these two cities, but that's the system's waterways. Ferries do indeed only connect to these two cities. But now, it's not impossible for us to sail our own boat in the direction of Xiaoyu City. After listening to these words, the Han family young master also sighed. So they're going to this city, not Shady Forest City? What's the problem? Gu Fei asked. It's nothing. It's just that for someone this is not good news. The Han family young master said. Have you contacted Water Depth? The sword demon asked. I think so. I don't remember. The Han family young master stood back at the bow of the boat. At the edge of the forest in Shady Forest City, Water Depth brought a few brothers from the guild and ambushed Qianli along the shore. Guild leader, what are you doing? Someone asked him. Someone will come ashore from here, but it's their own boat, so we don't know where to come from. We can only ambush them like this. Water Depth replied. Oh. No one in the guild asked much. They all believed in their guild leader. They thought it might be an important mission. Anyway, what they had to do wasn't tiring. They just had to lie in the grass and look at the shore outside. As the guild leader, Water Depth naturally took the lead. He lay in the grass and didn't move at all like Qiu Shaoyan. It's almost time. He looked at the time and thought. Another half an hour passed. From the Han family young master's binoculars, he could see that Jian Nan and the others had already docked their boat. There were no docks around here. As expected of Xiao Fog City, the system didn't have access to water. After the 7 people got off the boat, they didn't leave in a hurry. Instead, they looked for something to hide the boat. While doing this, Jian Nan reminded Glue to pay attention to the water. Of course, the Han family young master saw this and hurriedly reminded both boats to slow down. They didn't want to enter Glue's eagle eye's field of vision. After a while, the 7 people packed up and left. The Han family young master hurriedly signaled the 2 boats to quickly dock. Can we still catch up like this? Yutian Shenming asked. With this thing, how can we not find it? This isn't Shady Forest City. The Han family young master knocked on the binoculars and said. Because of the dense forest in Shady Forest City, the binoculars were also very limited. Therefore, the Han family young master had to ask Water Depth to help guard it. Since this wasn't Shady Forest City, the binoculars could naturally be used. It was better to rely on oneself than to ask for help from others. Unexpectedly, the owner of the boat laughed after hearing this. If it's Xiaoyu City, this thing may not be of much use. Why? The Han family young master was startled. He casually read the name of the main city. Could it be? This city has a lot of fog. The answer was as expected by the Han family young master. They looked at each other. It wasn't easy to chase Jian Nan to this place. Were they going to let him escape under the natural cover of such a thick fog? At this time, the Han family young master had new news. He opened it and saw that it was Water Depth. It's been more than an hour. Why aren't they here yet? I have good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? The Han family young master replied. Don't be so old-fashioned. If you have something to say, just say it. Water Depth had a faint feeling that something was wrong. The truth is, they may not be coming. You guys can call it a day and go back to rest. Sleep early. Fuck you, bastard. Are you messing with me again? You may not believe it even if I say it, but this time, I actually made a wrong deduction. Fuck, who are you trying to fool? See, I knew you wouldn't believe me. I can't understand it either. With my intelligence, how could I make a mistake? AI, let's not talk about this for now. I still have things to do. Let's talk later. After sending this message, the Han family young master quickly blocked Water Depth's message. No matter how much Water Depth's messages bombarded him, he was completely oblivious. He looked at the 5 people on the 2 ships and said, "Comrades, the biggest challenge in history is here. In this unfamiliar main city, in this unfamiliar environment, do you guys have the confidence to kill Jian Nan? As long as you tell me where he is, it's as easy as lifting a finger," Gu Fei said lazily. This really hit the Han family young master's sore spot. This was a rare situation that he didn't expect to happen and mess up his entire plan. "Brother," you said in shame. "This time it's my fault. I was too careless." "It's not your fault." The Han family young master waved his hand. Everyone thought that he was going to admit his mistake. Just as they were about to listen attentively, they saw him turn around and face bomb. Xiaowu City? Which motherfucking idiot designed this? Achoo. The self-disciplined game worker comrade, Yi Xiaowu, suddenly sneezed heavily. Chapter 425. The child elite group's 2 small boats docked at the shore. The 6 of them jumped off the boat. After paying the fare, the 2 players drove the boat back. Han family young master took the binoculars and looked in the direction that Jian Nanyu and the others had gone. All he saw was a vast expanse of white. Damn it! Han family young master cursed in his heart. The other 5 gathered around and asked for the binoculars. After admiring the scene for a while, they shook their heads and sighed. "Let's take a look at Xiaowu City first?" Sword Demon suggested. Everyone nodded. It wasn't easy to get here. Although there were no traces of Jian Nanyu and the others, they couldn't just turn back. That would be too embarrassing. "Wushang, go and chop their boat in half," Han family young master said. No one was in a good mood. Unscathed in battle was no exception. He strode to the place where Jian Nanyu and the others had hidden their boats. He pulled the 2 small boats ashore and took out a huge axe from his pocket. Clang clang clang, he vented his anger. In the blink of an eye, the 2 small wooden boats had become a pile of broken wood. The young master of the Han family had already gathered a large bundle of firewood and withered grass and piled it on the ground. He then took out a small book from his bosom and tore it open. Turning to Gu Fei, he said, "Expert, lend me a lighter." Fireball. Gu Fei raised his sword and chanted. A ball of flame jumped up from the tip of his sword. Han family young master reached out and lit the small book in his hand. He stuffed it into the pile of dried grass and said to Unscathed in Battle, "Whirlwind slash, give me a whirlwind slash." "What?" Unscathed in Battle asked. "Give me some wind." Unscathed in Battle performed another whirlwind slash. He used the power of the wind to burn the grass to burn the wood, and the wood to burn the broken boards of the boat. In the end, the planks of the boat were too wet. When they caught fire, only smoke could be seen but no flames could be seen. The people around the bonfire were choked and fled in all directions, cursing. Cough cough cough. The moment Unscathed in Battle's whirlwind flamethrower stopped casting his whirlwind slash, he was engulfed by a large cloud of gray smoke. He choked the most, coughing loudly as he tried to escape. He shouted at the few players, "Such a big cloud of smoke, will it expose us?" The Han family young master continued to admire the mist with his binoculars. He mumbled, "It would be best if we can lure Jian Nanyu and the others back." In the end, it was unknown whether it was because the fog was too thick or Jian Nanyu and the others did not turn back after they left, but the fire and smoke did not attract any attention. It became a pure vent. In the end, the broken planks could not be burned because they were too wet. Unscathed in Battle looked at the pile of broken planks resentfully and said, "I really want to piss on them again." The others glanced at him and ignored his vulgarity. They could eat and drink in the game because it was a form of enjoyment. As for boring things like going to the toilet, there was no simulation. If they really felt that way, they should go offline as soon as possible. Otherwise, they would pee their pants. Let's go to Fog City. The Han family young master pointed ahead and walked forward. Sword Demon and Brother Yu followed behind. Gu Fei put his hand on Yutian Shenming's shoulder. Yutian, why are your legs shaking? Nonsense, I'm not. Yutian Shenming looked down. He was indeed a little nervous, but it was too much of an exaggeration to say that his legs were shaking. Gu Fei smiled. Follow me. Yutian Shenming quickly followed. In the game, they had the help of coordinates, so the fog was not a big deal. But for people like Yutian Shenming, who could not use coordinates and could only rely on the landmarks in his field of vision, Fog City was a nightmare. The six of them walked for a while and gradually fell into the fog. When they looked back, they could no longer see the large body of water behind them. Their vision was completely blocked by the fog. The Han family young master, who was extremely sensitive to distance and coordinates, roughly said, "The visual range is about 50 to 60 meters. Yutian, can you see further with your eagle eyes?" Huh. Yutian Shenming looked around. He did not know how far he was. The Han family young master had to find a reference for him. He pointed in a certain direction. "There is a blurry tree over there. Do you see it?" Yutian Shenming stared. "Where? Why can't I see it?" "Damn, you said it was eagle eyes." The Han family young master snorted. "Is that a tree? I think it's a house. Yutian, do you see that house?" Gu Fei looked in the direction that the Han family young master pointed. He did not see any trees, but it seemed like a house. "No, I just see a big rock," Yutian Shenming said. Everyone was speechless because it was too blurry. It was said that they could see 50 to 60 meters, but they could not even tell if it was a stone house or a tree. It did not seem to be visible. "Let's hurry. Maybe it will be better in the city," Brother Yu said as he flipped through his little notebook. He also had the coordinates of Fog City and some basic information. He had neglected the existence of this city because he was too superstitious about the system's water transportation. "Go this way." Brother Yu looked at the coordinates and led the way for the few of them. At the same time, he briefly introduced the situation of Xiaowu City to everyone. Everyone has already seen the characteristics. It is just that the fog is thick. It is said that it is slightly better inside the city than outside. The biggest guild here is called Flowers in the Fog, a level 6 guild. There are also many level 5 mercenary groups. In terms of experts, 4 of them are in the top 10. One is 3 Size of Flowing Maple, who is ranked 7th on the Warrior leaderboard. The other is Apple Vinegar, who is ranked 4th on the Thief leaderboard, Windstring, who is ranked 8th on the Grandmaster of Combat leaderboard, and Strange Eye, who is ranked 2nd on the Sorcerer leaderboard and also one of the new top 5. Everyone should know this person, right? "Yes, I do," Gu Fei replied. The others looked at Gu Fei in shock. "How did you know?" They were all too familiar with Gu Fei's character. He did not have much interest in online games, and any expert player would be nothing more than cannon fodder in his hands. He would never care about these famous players. Yet he knew of this player called Strange Pupil. Could it be that the two of them were in some sort of relationship? "You guys know each other?" Brother Yu asked. He felt that the only reason Gu Fei knew this person was because the two of them knew each other in real life. That was why Gu Fei knew his in-game identity. "I don't know him, but I have seen this name before," Gu Fei said. "Where did you see him?" The experts were all very interested. "The forums," Gu Fei said. "You also go on the forums?" Brother Yu was excited. Could it be that after spending so much time with him, he had developed a hobby in this area? See, this was the charm of a person. "A long time ago," Gu Fei said. It was indeed a long time ago. That was the first time Gu Fei showed off his abilities. When he killed Non-Smiler to level 8, his sorcerer equipment was appraised and displayed on the forums, causing a lot of controversy. At that time, a user called Strange Eye made a post that caught Gu Fei's attention. Even though he did not know that Gu Fei's strength was mainly due to his kung fu, his analysis was very accurate. Even though he did not know if this user was the same person as the Strange Eye in the game, Gu Fei at least had an impression of the name. "Oh, is that so?" Brother Yu was a little surprised after listening to Gu Fei's explanation. It had been so long, but Gu Fei still remembered everything. Brother Yu was sure that Gu Fei had seen the posts that attracted attention. Brother Yu had a vague impression of Gu Fei's analysis, but he could not remember who the user was. From this analysis, it sounds like an expert. But it might not be the same person in the forums and in the game, Brother Yu said. Gu Fei nodded. Actually, when Brother Yu said, "Everyone knows this person, right?" he casually answered, "Yes." He did not expect this group of people to have such a big reaction and dig out so much information. He felt that these people really had too much time on their hands. "Don't worry too much about the level ranking," Sword Demon said. "The difficulty of leveling up is so high, and the difference between everyone's levels is very small. Skills and equipment are more important. Although Jian Nanyu dropped a level, I don't think anyone in the top 10 warriors would dare to say that they can beat him." Yes, Boss Sword Demon is right. Drifting, that idiot, looks like he's number 1 on the sorcerer leaderboard. It'll be a piece of cake for him to come and fight with Qianli. Yutian Shenming said. Everyone gave him a sideways glance. This inference was a little too ridiculous, because Gu Fei was really not a representative. It was hard to say whether there was a difference of 5 or 10 levels between him and a monster like him. Suddenly, Sword Demon remembered that level 10 Gu Fei had defeated him when he was level 25. It was really unbearable to recall the past. The discussion about Strange Pupil came to an end. Brother Yu continued to report. Also, there's someone here this Sunday. It's Yen Xiaozhu, number 11 on the thief leaderboard. Ha, this name sounds like a girl. Unscathed in Battle said. And it feels like it's a beauty, Yutian Shenming said. We need to find a chance to spar with them, Unscathed in Battle said seriously. Gu Fei really wanted to introduce these two guys to the flowers for an eternity. They would definitely be very compatible. The 6 of them continued on their way. At this time, Gu Fei received a message from 100 Generations Jingluan, asking for his location. Do you know Xiaoyu City? Gu Fei replied. How do we go? 100 Generations Jingluan asked. The system doesn't have this route. You can rent a boat from the guild near the tavern on the beach. I'll send you over. Gu Fei's instructions were quite detailed. The main reason was that Waterside City wasn't very safe. If he randomly found a boat, he might very well board a pirate ship. However, the businesses under the big guild still valued their reputation, so it shouldn't be a bad idea to find them. At this time, 100 Generations Jingluan was also waiting to board a boat at the dock. When he heard that he had to find a boat himself, he went back to the tavern to ask. The various guilds that set up the tavern were also in this business. Naturally, they wouldn't neglect customers. However, the direction to Xiaoyu City was really expensive. This was because this route was not provided by the system. Players had to seize the opportunity to be unkind. Although 100 Generations Jingluan was one of the 5 strongmen, he was really poor. This was because, like Gu Fei, the amount of time he invested in the game was quite limited compared to the average player. At this time, after emptying his pockets, he only had 98 gold coins, 76 silver coins and 54 copper coins. When 100 Generations Jingluan saw this, he guessed that he really didn't have any money and didn't want to be greedy. Thus, he generously exempted him from paying 5 gold coins, and took 95 from him. 100 Generations Jingluan boarded the boat, and felt that this trip to earn money was really risky. This time, he wouldn't be able to kill Jian Nanyu and wouldn't be able to earn any money. He wouldn't even have enough money to travel back. It was too miserable. He really didn't understand why the ancient heroes didn't seem to have a job. But why did they never lack money? 100 Generations Jingluan put his hands behind his head and crossed his legs. He lay on the boat and thought to himself. Chapter 426. They passed through mountains, ridges, rivers, and valleys. The terrain around Xia Fog City wasn't that simple. The only thing that didn't change was the thick fog. The 6 of them had a hard time walking through it. Because they only knew the direction of Xia Fog City and didn't know the way, the 6 of them could only move forward in a straight line. No matter what dangers they encountered, they would force their way through. As they slowly met other players, the 6 of them had a much smoother journey because they could finally ask for directions. As the number of people gradually increased, the 6 of them felt that they were getting closer and closer to Xia Fog City. After asking for directions again, Brother Yu ran over and announced happily. That player is only level 14. It won't be long before he arrives. As expected, after walking for a while, the outline of Xiafog City finally appeared in the fog. The 6 of them were almost at the foot of the city walls. Xiafog City's fog was simply unstoppable. It was able to completely cover the entire city. There were players coming and going at the city gates. The instant the Han family young master brushed past someone, he immediately asked, "How do I get to the tavern?" The other person first looked at the Han family young master's appearance in surprise, and then gave him the coordinates of the nearest tavern. The Han family young master turned around and saw the 5 of them looking at him with disdain. "I think we're here to chase after Jian Nan," Gu Fei said. "I know. However, we've asked many players along the way, but no one has seen them before. So we don't know where they're going. As the group leader, I've decided to find a tavern to drink a few cups before making a plan. Maybe Jian Nan's intelligence is just a bit closer to mine, and he thought of the same plan. Maybe we'll meet at a tavern," the Han family young master said. "Amazing my ass," the others muttered. However, what the Han family young master said was possible. After running around for so long and finally arriving at a new place, finding a tavern to rest was understandable. Afterwards, the 6 of them came to the nearest tavern. They pushed open the door and wanted to nervously search, but they didn't find anything. Jian Nan's group of 7 was obviously not that delicate. Although they had been running for their lives for a day, they were still busy somewhere. The Han family young master's purpose seemed to be to drink. While everyone was looking for him, he had already arrived at the counter and ordered 2 bottles of liquor. He then chose a seat and sat down. By the time everyone came over, he had already finished his cup. "Brother Yu," asked Jian Nan Yu, "when will you pay the other half?" Han family young master said. "I asked earlier but you ignored me," Brother Yu said. "Did he block you too?" Han family young master said. "Why also?" Brother Yu was puzzled. "Nothing, it's none of your business." The Han family young master drank another 2 cups and said to them, "Let's analyze the current situation. The first one is also the worst. Jian Nan's group of 7 took advantage of the thick fog to wander around. They didn't come to Xiaoyu City, but went somewhere else. What a jinx, hurry up and spit." Han family young master poured a cup of liquor and passed it to Unscathed in Battle beside him. Unscathed in Battle was very confused. "I'm not the jinx, why should I spit?" Other than this situation, of course they also came to Xiaoyu City. Everyone put yourselves in the shoes of a new main city. What would you do if it was you? What we are doing right now is my answer, Han family young master said. Go to the revival point and register. Sword Demon was the steady and cautious type. Walk around the city and chat with the players. Go to the guild building and the union building to take a look. Brother Yu was the intelligence-gathering type and liked to quickly grasp the strength distribution of a city. Walk around more and familiarize yourself with the terrain. Mark the important places. Yutian Shenming was the direction idiot type. Walk around the trading street and the auction house to see if there is any equipment that we haven't seen before. Unscathed in Battle was the type who never forgot to fish for benefits. The last one was Gu Fei, a washing PK. This was the type who always had PK points on him. 6 people, 6 answers. Among them, Gu Fei, Brother Yu and Yutian Shenming all had special attributes, so it was unlikely that it would happen to Jian Nan's group. The situation that Han family young master mentioned was basically eliminated. This was the tavern closest to the city gate. If Jian Nan's group wanted to sit, they should be here. So they are either registering or shopping? Brother Yu concluded. When they heard this answer, they instinctively leaned towards the first option. 7 men going to the trading street immediately after arriving in the new city. No matter how they thought about it, it sounded weird. They thought about it and looked down on the option that Unscathed in Battle provided. He was so unmanly. The first thing he thought of when he arrived in a new city was to go shopping? In the end, Han family young master made the arrangements. Sword Demon, go to the nearby revival point. Sword Demon nodded and left. Qianli, go to the taverns, Han family young master said. For what? The 7th possibility is that Jian Nan's group has friends here, so they arranged to meet up with them. That makes sense. Gu Fei nodded and went. Sword Demon had stealth so he wouldn't be detected. Gu Fei would be detected, but he could kill him directly. It was safer for these two to act alone. Therefore Han family young master chose these two to do things. The other three didn't have any tasks. However, drinking was only Han family young master's hobby. The other three couldn't sit still after a while. I'll go take a look too. Brother, you said. Maybe I'll find something. Me too. Unscathed in battle also stood up. Han family young master didn't have any objections. However, when he saw that Yutian Shinming was also eager to try, he patted him and said, "The fog is thick. Don't run around." Yutian Shinming's expression dimmed. Gu Fei walked out of the tavern and immediately asked the passers-by where the tavern was. The passers-by looked at Gu Fei in surprise and pointed behind him. Gu Fei quickly expressed that he wanted to know everything. Therefore he quickly got the coordinates of 11 taverns in Xiaowu City. Of the 11 taverns, 6 belonged to the system, and 5 were opened by players. Gu Fei specifically asked the passers-by. According to his experience, players tended to go to player-open taverns when they had a gathering with friends. This kind of tavern was more popular with players, and the business was more humane. From time to time, there would be buy 6 get 1 free, which was very popular with players. Gu Fei found a tavern, and was ready to go. Suddenly, someone called him from behind. He turned around and saw that it was Yutian Shinming. The fog was thick, and he didn't dare to run around alone. However, compared to drinking alone with Han family young master, he felt that it was better to die in the fog. When he walked out, he saw that Gu Fei had just asked for directions and hadn't gone far. He immediately stopped him and decided to go with Gu Fei. The two of them came to a nearby player-open tavern. After confirming that there was no mistake, Gu Fei took out his weapon and walked in. As long as he found Jian Nanyu, he would immediately fight. Was there a need to say anything? This tavern was much smaller than the systems, or the little raised bar in Cloud City. However, the atmosphere was very good. The tavern was full of laughter. Even the owner of the tavern was chatting with familiar customers. Gu Fei carefully looked around and didn't see Jian Nanyu. However, although the tavern was small, it had everything. Although this tavern wasn't big, the owner still had a small private room. Not finding Jian Nanyu in the hall, Gu Fei walked toward the private rooms. There were 4 private rooms in total. Just like Little Ray's bar, there was a cloth hanging on the door as a curtain. Gu Fei didn't think too much. When he reached the first room, he stretched out his hand and lifted the curtain. He saw a man and a woman inside whispering intimately. Feeling someone lift the curtain, the two of them looked up in panic. In the end, Gu Fei, who had lifted the curtain, was even more panicked than the two of them. After saying sorry, he hurriedly put the curtain back to its original position. What's wrong? Yutian Shenming, who was behind, didn't see what was going on inside. He had never seen Gu Fei so nervous before. Curious, he also wanted to lift the curtain, but Gu Fei slapped his hand down. It's very busy inside. Busy with what? A man and a woman, Gu Fei said. Wow. Yutian Shenming wanted to lift the curtain even more, but after being glared at by Gu Fei, he didn't make a move in the end. In the second private room, Gu Fei didn't dare to mess around anymore. He knocked on the partition. What's that sound? Hearing someone mumbling inside, Gu Fei lifted the curtain and saw 4 players inside gambling with homemade cards. There was a lot of gold coins on the table. Sorry, wrong room. Gu Fei hurriedly retreated. He knocked on the third room again, but there was no response. He knocked again, but there was still no sound. Was there no one? Gu Fei lifted the curtain and saw a girl sitting opposite the door. Her expression was cold, and she had the temperament of an iceberg beauty. Gu Fei was stunned when he saw her, because the girl's black mage robe was quite similar to his. After a few seconds, the girl still didn't say anything and just looked at Gu Fei. Gu Fei reacted and said, "Sorry, wrong room." After lowering the curtain, he left. Behind him, Yutian Shenming grabbed him and said excitedly, "Beauty." Gu Fei ignored him and went to the last private room. He knocked and lifted the curtain, only to be surprised. "Why are you here?" Yutian Shenming stuck his head out and immediately jumped up. "Damn, why are you here?" Drifting, left-hand love, right-hand handsome, and left-hand love were in the private room. After the Raining Across the Seas mission ended, they separated from everyone else. It was rumored that they had even left the Black Hand mercenary group. Everyone guessed that the three of them would go somewhere else and not return to Cloud City. Who would have thought that they would meet here? Why are you here? In fact, Drifting was more surprised than Gu Fei and the others to see him. After all, he was used to wandering around the main cities, while most players stayed in their own territory. Gu Fei and the others should be in Cloud City. It's a long story. Why are you here? Asked Gu Fei. We have to start with our game philosophy, said Drifting. Bah, pretending. Yutian Shenming despised him. Come out and fight me one-on-one if you have the guts. No. Drifting laughed. This place is so foggy. I'm afraid I won't be able to find my way back if I go out. It's safer to stay in the tavern. Butterfly not. Recently the content has changed. It's a little dull. Chapter 427. Yutian Shenming's poor sense of direction was mocked by Drifting, who he hated the most. He was so angry that he wanted to fight Drifting to the death. Naturally, no one took him seriously. Gu Fei nodded at Drifting and said, "We still have something to do. We'll leave first." Yutian Shenming was still yelling at Drifting when Gu Fei put down the curtain to separate him from Drifting. "Let's go." As Gu Fei spoke, the curtain behind him was lifted again. Drifting walked out and asked, "What's the matter? Do you need help?" Drifting asked, "I don't need his help. An idiot will only make things worse," shouted Yutian Shenming. "Are you free?" said Gu Fei. "I'm bored," said Drifting. "We don't want to go to this stupid place to level up." "Are you afraid that you can't find your way home?" Ha 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 ha. Yutian Shenming was very brave. As someone with poor sense of direction, he dared to laugh at others. Drifting glanced at Yutian Shenming and continued to talk to Gu Fei. "I was going to find a random quest to do, but it seems like you have something more interesting to do?" "Nothing. We're looking for Jian Nanyu. Have you seen him?" said Gu Fei. "No. Is he here?" asked Drifting. "I'm not sure. No matter where he is, if you see him, tell me," said Gu Fei. Gu Fei didn't need help to kill people. He just needed to know the whereabouts of his target. For him, this was enough. However, this was obviously boring for Drifting, so he could only nod and say, "I will." Then they said goodbye and Drifting returned to the private room. Although Yutian Shenming was angry, he still left the tavern with Gu Fei. However, as soon as they left the tavern, they saw a PK. A man against a woman. A warrior against a mage. Surprise flashed across Gu Fei and Yutian Shenming's faces. This woman was the cold beauty from the tavern's private room number 3, and her opponent was the unscathed in battle. Both sides faced each other. A blue light had just faded from the girl's staff, and it was as cold as she was. Unscathed in battle stood proudly with his sword in one hand. He was a true expert after all. However, even though the sword was already in his hand, the expert did not make a move, because he was already frozen there like a fool. Only then did Gu Fei and Yutian Shenming realize that they were watching a PK that was about to end. Unscathed in battle actually did not completely freeze to death, but his attack was so slow that it made people's hair stand on end. The girl had already raised her staff and started chanting for the next attack. What was waiting for him was death. He was in pain, but then he saw Gu Fei and Yutian Shenming walk out of the tavern next to him. They were very surprised. "Hurry and save me." As expected of an expert, the news came so quickly. The girl's spell had already been cast, and the ice whirlwind swept towards Unscathed in battle. It was already impossible to interrupt it. Gu Fei had no choice but to teleport in front of Unscathed in battle and use dual flame flash. When spells collided, the one with the highest damage would win. Gu Fei obviously had the upper hand, and the ice whirlwind had already been completely destroyed by him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yutian Shenming was counting. His bones were filled with the qualities of a mage, and he was already calculating how long Unscathed in battle would be frozen. When he counted to 5, Unscathed in battle finally regained his freedom. When the girl saw Gu Fei suddenly flash in front of her and destroy her ice whirlwind, a trace of surprise flashed through her eyes. However, she still didn't make a sound, and only coldly stared at the three. Gu Fei felt a bit awkward because he knew that even though Unscathed in Battle was a top-tier expert in the game, he was never arrogant. When they first met, Gu Fei thought that he was a quiet and calm person. It wasn't until he was reborn Amethyst that Unscathed in Battle revealed his true colors in front of Gu Fei. If this guy was going to cause any trouble, Gu Fei believed that it could only be in this area. Right now, in an unfamiliar city, with an unfamiliar girl, Unscathed in Battle was fighting someone. Gu Fei didn't need to think to know that this guy must have tried to strike up a conversation with a beauty, but was rebuffed, and the two turned around and started fighting. The one who attacked first was definitely not Unscathed in Battle, but this girl. Unfortunately, the one who spoke first was definitely Unscathed in Battle, so Gu Fei didn't feel that it was very honorable for him to help him. As a result, Gu Fei didn't say anything. He only turned around and patted Unscathed in Battle, saying, "Let's go." He felt that it was best for them to just leave things as they were. However, as soon as he turned around, a murderous aura assaulted him from behind. Gu Fei's heart trembled, and he hurriedly dodged to the side, slashing out with his sword. The sword slashed through thin air, but the other party had already revealed her figure in order to dodge. It was actually another girl, but she looked quite young. At this time, she circled around Gu Fei's back and actually wanted to continue attacking him. As if he had eyes behind his back, Gu Fei didn't turn around and blocked the attack with his sword. Then he turned around to face the enemy, but he saw the girl raise her left hand. Gu Fei didn't know what this meant. He only saw that the hand was raised towards his head, so he tilted his head slightly to dodge. In the end, he saw a vast expanse of green powder scatter in the air. In the next moment, Gu Fei's vision went black, and he couldn't see anything. This change was something that Gu Fei had never seen before in PvP. He panicked a little, but he knew that the opponent's attack was coming. He listened to the wind and blocked the opponent's attack with his sword again. With a ding, he blocked the opponent's attack with his sword again. Gu Fei couldn't see, so he couldn't see the surprised expression on the opponent's face. He only knew that he couldn't see anything, so he must have been hit by the opponent's skill. This was definitely a disadvantageous battle. In close combat, he could rely on his ears to block the wind, but Gu Fei didn't forget that there was a sorcerer there. A sorcerer's attack couldn't be determined by listening to the wind. Thinking of this, Gu Fei hurriedly dodged to the side, planning to let Unscathed in Battle and Yutian Shunming block the attack. Since it was a skill, of course it had a time limit. Gu Fei's prediction was not wrong. At this time, the sorcerer had indeed used a heavenly fire wheel on top of their heads. Unscathed in Battle also dodged to the side. However, Gu Fei couldn't see. Dodging was the right decision, but the direction he dodged was wrong. He ran in one direction in a daze, and after 2 steps, he crashed into a wall. Yutian Shunming was stunned. He didn't see Gu Fei's abnormal state at all. When he saw him rush towards the wall, he thought he had some strange skill up his sleeve. He didn't expect him to directly hit the wall like an idiot. Ha 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 ha. A crisp laughter came from the fierce battle. Thinking about the sorcerer's cold expression, even though Gu Fei couldn't see, he could guess that it was the little girl who was laughing. At the same time, he also guessed that Yutian Shunming and Unscathed in Battle probably didn't know that they were in a situation. So he quickly shouted to the two, "I can't see anything." As soon as he finished speaking, he heard a sharp whistle. Gu Fei knew that Yutian Shunming had made his move. However, this move made Gu Fei feel bad. Yutian Shunming's bow and arrow damage was extremely high. When he fired, it was always majestic. After the arrow was released, it would sound like a bird singing happily. Normally, this would be fine, but in this situation, he had to rely on his ears. This guy's attack was really troublesome. Gu Fei could clearly feel a murderous intent approaching him at high speed. He knew that the little thief girl was rushing towards him again. However, this was the extent of the murderous intent. Thieves were a class that mainly focused on ambushing, so the sound of their daggers was already weak. At this time, when Yutian Shunming was causing trouble, his ears were filled with the whistling sound of his arrows. Helpless, he could only choose to escape. He reached out his hand and touched the wall in front of him. He quickly turned around and ran. After killing people in the game for so long, when had he ever been in such a sorry state? He even had to run into a wall. Gu Fei didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although Gu Fei's movement speed was fast, no one could move at full speed after closing their eyes. Moreover, his opponent was a thief. He only wanted to buy a little more time. Moreover, he believed that unscathed in battle wasn't a dead person. At this time, he should at least lend him a hand, right? Sure enough, unscathed in battle wasn't a dead person. Gu Fei had only run a few steps when he heard unscathed in battle's indignant voice behind him. Damn, I can't see anymore. Then he heard the howling of the wind. Gu Fei knew that unscathed in battle must have used whirlwind slash. This wasn't a bad judgment, but it made the sound even louder. Gu Fei didn't want to play the listening game anymore. So Gu Fei also stopped running. He quickly turned around and lowered his center of gravity. His left arm was in front of him, and his right hand held the sword slightly behind him. Night Battle. 8 directional 17 forms. As the name suggested, it was specifically used to deal with enemies at night when one's vision wasn't clear. However, it was important to note that it only meant that one's vision wasn't clear. It meant that one could more or less see the opponent's figure. There was also another point. If it was really a fight at night, then of course, the enemy would also be dark. No one's vision would be clear. It wasn't like Gu Fei's current situation where he was completely blind and his opponent could see everything clearly. However, there was no other way. Gu Fei could only use this move to barely deal with it. The girl saw Gu Fei's strange posture and giggled. What's going on? As she spoke, she circled behind Gu Fei. This was the habit of every rogue when they fought. Gu Fei was secretly happy. Just when he felt that the opponent had finished running and was about to rush over, he heard Yu Tianshengming shout, "Qianli, behind you." As soon as the girl heard this, she immediately ran back to her original position. Gu Fei was furious and recklessly shouted into the channel. "What the hell are you yelling for? Shut up." Yu Tianshengming was reminding him out of goodwill. He didn't know that Gu Fei was pretending not to know. Night Battle's 17 forms of 8 directions was actually very sinister. He used the front as a defensive position, and the back as an offensive position. This was to use the darkness to fight. If the opponent circled behind him, they would definitely think that a sneak attack was successful. Little did they know that this was the opponent's true attack position. Gu Fei felt that the girl had fallen for his trick. He didn't expect Yu Tianshengming to be so helpful. He blindly shouted and made the girl think that he was going to turn around and run again. Gu Fei could only pretend to turn around. The girl once again finished running and rushed behind Gu Fei. She was worried that Yu Tianshengming would shout again. Actually, there was no need to do so much for a blind person. It was just that rogue skills were more powerful when used from the back. Skills like backstab couldn't be used if they weren't from the back. It's coming. Gu Fei felt the murderous intent coming from behind him. Chapter 428. Sensing the aura was something that could only be roughly sensed. It was impossible to accurately sense the distance. But at this time, Gu Fei could not care so much. He vaguely felt that his opponent was behind him, so he suddenly turned around and slashed down with his sword. The sword missed. Gu Fei knew that he had either slashed too early or missed his target. But he was not nervous. He immediately followed up with a second slash. The 17 styles of Night Battle was a continuous attack. The key was to grasp the opponent's position in one move and hit them to death in one go, resolutely not giving the opponent any room to fight back. Gu Fei's first slash missed. He took a step forward and raised his second slash, but it still missed. At this time, he was sure that it was not the distance but his slash missed. But should he adjust to the left or to the right? Gu Fei was annoyed. Damn, at this critical moment when he really needed help, Yu Tianshengming didn't say a word. Who would have thought that when he was thinking left or right, he heard laughter in front of him? It turned out that the girl saw Gu Fei slashing blindly and couldn't help but laugh again. Gu Fei would often miss the sound of the wind created by the fists and kicks during a fight, even if he closed his eyes to hear it. But at this moment, how could Gu Fei be mistaken when he heard such a clear and bright laughter? He immediately adjusted to the third move. The girl was still laughing. Suddenly, a sword light flashed in front of her, and her laughter stopped. She was really blocked by the sword move, because Gu Fei's sword had actually touched her mouth. It couldn't be helped. Who asked the sound to come from this place? Gu Fei's attack was so accurate, and the situation was so critical. There was no time to think so much. The girl was scared out of her wits. She didn't even dare to move. But Gu Fei didn't know that his move had such a terrible effect. He only felt that he had stabbed something. Then he pulled back his sword. The fourth move, the fifth move, the sixth move. The 17 styles of night battle officially began. Not to mention that the girl was scared out of her wits. Even if she was completely normal, it would be difficult for her to defend or dodge under the cover of Gu Fei's sword move. The sword light flickered and lightning flashed from time to time. It was only because Gu Fei couldn't see right now that he couldn't unleash the full power of his attacks. Even so, it was enough to finish off this little girl when all 17 styles were used. The sorcerer was anxious when she saw this. She wanted to help, but Yutian Shenming kept harassing her with his class advantage. The sorcerer gritted her teeth helplessly. If it wasn't for the fact that Yutian Shenming's heart had softened because of her beauty, with his skills and profession, it wouldn't have been difficult for him to kill this sorcerer. Just as the little thief girl was about to die under Gu Fei's sword, Gu Fei's attack suddenly stopped. It turned out that his eyes had suddenly recovered at this moment. In the blink of an eye, everything in front of him had become clear. There was not even a transition period. Then he saw the pale face of the little girl in front of him. Gu Fei thought about it and felt that there was no need to kill her, so he stopped attacking. Even so, she was able to make Gu Fei suffer such a big loss. This little girl was weird, so Gu Fei didn't dare to be careless. Although he stopped attacking, his sword still rested on her shoulder. Don't move. The little girl didn't dare to make a sound. Gu Fei looked back and saw that unscathed in battle's whirlwind slash had also reached its end. He was waving his sword wildly to protect himself. In fact, no one was prepared to attack him at the moment. On the other side, Yutian Shenming and the sorcerer were playing around. Gu Fei looked at them and knew that this was no longer a PK, but a teasing. Seeing Yutian Shenming's excited expression, Gu Fei sighed inwardly. It's such a waste of talent that you're not absorbed by the flowers. Everyone stop, or I'll kill her. Gu Fei finally shouted. Using a hostage to threaten someone didn't seem like a very honorable thing to do. But that also depended on the situation. In this situation, Gu Fei had already killed the thief, and Imperial Divine Him had already killed the mage. So why would I use a hostage to threaten you? I'm giving you a chance. As expected, when the sorcerer heard Gu Fei's shout and saw that the little girl had been restrained, her eyes showed concern and she immediately stopped attacking. Yutian Shenming smiled and ran to Gu Fei's side. Hee, you're so despicable. You can even do this. Gu Fei ignored him. Seeing that the other party had stopped, he withdrew his sword from the little girl's shoulder. It's just a small matter. There's no need to fight and kill. Everyone disperse. The little girl had probably recovered by now. When she saw that Gu Fei had withdrawn his sword, she quickly ran to the sorcerer's side. She pulled on the sorcerer's sleeve and said, "Sister, quickly kill them." Wow, it's a pair of beautiful sisters. I was wondering why they looked so similar. Yutian Shenming was pleasantly surprised. Gu Fei really wanted to slap him for still paying attention to this. But that little girl didn't seem to know what was good for her. Gu Fei thought as he raised his sword and chanted a lightning spell. A blue light flashed and a bolt of lightning struck the little girl. The little girl's face immediately returned to its previous pale state. Don't be noisy. If you keep this up, I'll kill you. To prevent the little girl from stirring up trouble again, Gu Fei could only threaten her. You're trying to scare me. The little girl's voice had changed, but she was still stubborn. But the sorcerer knew that Gu Fei wasn't trying to scare her. Using dual flame flash to disperse her ice whirlwind was definitely very powerful. Using a lightning spell to instantly kill a thief who was already at death's door wasn't something that could be said casually. Little bamboo, don't say any more. The girl who had been silent finally opened her mouth. She took a piece of bread from her pocket and gave it to the little girl. The little girl didn't say anything. She took the bread and retreated to the side to eat. But from time to time, she would glare hatefully at Gu Fei. Haha, that's good. Gu Fei didn't stand on ceremony. He took out an apple and ate it. Together with Yutian Shenming, he admired the unscathed in battle, who was still blindly hacking away at the thief. This guy was probably too focused and didn't hear the conversation that had already ended. But in the blink of an eye, his eyes had returned to normal. Looking at the expressions of the crowd, he quickly stopped his frenzied slashing. He coughed lightly and struck a handsome pose. He waved his hand and tidied his hair. Then he put on a solemn and silent expression. Gu Fei really wanted to go over and give him a slap. You're the video mage? No one expected the one to take the initiative to break the silence at this moment would be the cold female sorcerer. Moreover, she had already seen through Gu Fei's identity. Yes, that's me. Gu Fei nodded. Qianli drunk? The other party asked. Gu Fei was startled. He didn't expect this person to even know his name. Of course, this was no longer a secret. Most players in Cloud City knew about it. Therefore, it wasn't surprising that more and more people knew about it. However, this was the first time someone had seen through his identity so thoroughly. Gu Fei was still surprised. You mean the 27149 from before? The girl's words were truly shocking. It wasn't surprising that she knew the video mage's name was Qianli Drunk. However, there weren't many people who could link this to 27149. You're studying me? Gu Fei was surprised. The girl nodded. I've noticed you for a long time. Gu Fei immediately thought of something. Your strange pupil? The girl nodded. Since then, Gu Fei's situation had often become a hot topic in the forums. If someone was really in the mood to study him, it was very likely that they were the same person. It's been hard on you. Gu Fei could only laugh dryly. Unscathed in battle and Yutian Shenming were very unhappy. Gu Fei had taken all the limelight in front of a beautiful girl. Yutian Shenming was confused. He had suppressed her for so long with his archery. Why didn't she even look at him? As for unscathed in battle, he was frozen like an idiot before he could even use his 7-foot-long sword. It was hard for him to stand there as if nothing had happened. Actually, he had a little secret in his heart. When they fought earlier, he had said that he would only use one sword. In the end, he had humiliated himself. Unscathed in battle sighed in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. Hehe, it's nice to meet you. Gu Fei greeted strange pupil politely and said to unscathed in battle and Yutian Shenming, shall we leave first? Leave? Where to? The two of them said in unison. It's better to meet by chance than to invite each other. We don't get to know each other without a fight. Why don't we go in and have a drink? Unscathed in battle was like a poet. That's right. Qianli, you're so ungentlemanly. Yutian Shenming looked at Gu Fei with disdain. In the end, the girl had a sharp eye. Since you guys have something to do, we'll leave first. We'll meet again in the future. Xiaozhu, let's go. It's fine. We don't have anything to do. We're fine. Isn't that right, Qianli? Unscathed in battle quickly grabbed Gu Fei's shoulder and winked at him. Yutian Shenming also chimed in. That's right. It's fine. Let's have a drink together? Strange pupil looked at the three of them and said, if there's anything you need, you can tell me. Maybe I can help. Is that so? Then have you seen a guy called Jian Nanyu? If you do, tell me. I'm going to kill him. Unscathed in battle continued to hold Gu Fei with one hand and swung his sword with the other. Jian Nanyu? We just met in the tavern, strange pupil said. What? The three of them were shocked. They did not expect Jian Nanyu to be of help. At this moment, it was clear who was putting on an act and who was the real deal. Zhan Wushang stood there in a daze, while Gu Fei anxiously asked, where did he go now? I'm not sure, strange pupil answered. Are you friends with him? Gu Fei asked. No, strange pupil answered quickly. Then you guys are. Gu Fei was confused. We're just business partners. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. I wanted to see the equipment of a videographer like you, so I hired them to kill you. Strange pupil continued to look at Gu Fei. Gu Fei scratched his head and looked at unscathed in battle and Yutian Shenming. Jian Nanyu wants to kill me? Why didn't I know about it? Yeah, weren't you the one who was hunting him? The two of them were equally confused. Chapter 429. Jian Nanyu wanted to rob Gu Fei, but it was just a plan from the beginning to the end. He tried very hard to make it a reality, but he never had the chance to do so. He didn't even have the time to show his intention clearly before his entire team was wiped out in Sunset City. When he returned to Linshui City, he was ready to give Gu Fei a good blow. However, Gu Fei killed him the moment he got off the boat. Then he was chased by the entire city and was forced to leave his hometown. How tragic was that? Under such circumstances, who would have guessed that Jian Nanyu still had such thoughts? Therefore, when Strange Pupil revealed the gossip, Gu Fei, Yutian Shenming, and Unscathed in Battle were a little confused. Jian Nanyu is so ambitious? Really? Yutian Shenming muttered. In the end, the three of them looked at Strange Pupil again. Why did she tell them about this? They were really puzzled. In the end, Gu Fei was the one who asked straightforwardly. Why did you suddenly tell us this? Are you looking for trouble? Gu Fei said as he clenched the sword in his hand. If Strange Pupil strongly asked him to kill her, he was willing to help her. Strange Pupil looked at him and said, It seems that you are chasing Jian Nanyu. I want you to know that I hired him to do this so you can come to me directly. You don't have to trouble him. Oh. The three of them answered in unison. Then Gu Fei nodded and said, Miss, I'm very impressed that you dare to take responsibility for what you've done. However, you misunderstood. I just found out that Jian Nanyu wanted to kill my equipment. I'm chasing him for another reason. Since you didn't hide it from me, I won't hide it from you either. In fact, I was also hired to kill him. I feel very sorry to hear that. If I had known that he wanted to find me, I wouldn't have worked so hard to find him. I could have just found a random place to wait for him. Strange. I was stunned by Gu Fei's words. He was about to speak when Gu Fei suddenly said, By the way, since you're his employer, can you please inform him that I'm here so he can come and kill me? Strange. I was stunned by Gu Fei's words. Looking at the sincere expression on Gu Fei's face, Strange Eye's cold expression turned into one of extreme embarrassment. She did not know how to answer his request. In the end, she could only say, I'm afraid I can't help you with this. Just now, Jian Nanyu told me to cancel the mission. He returned the deposit and paid the compensation. You promised him? How can you indulge him like this? If he wants to fight, he fights. If he doesn't want to fight, he doesn't fight. That's too unprofessional. Gu Fei was furious. Strange. I did not know what to say this time. Even the little girl who was munching on her bread was looking at this strange man with a strange way of thinking. Then do you know where he went? In desperation, Gu Fei could only ask this. I don't know. Strange Pupil shook his head. Sigh. Gu Fei let out a deep sigh. What should we do now? Yutian Shenming asked. Since we can't find Jian Nanyu right now, why don't we sit down and have a drink? Unscathed in Battle suggested. That's a good idea. I support it. Yutian Shenming nodded happily. Oh right, Gu Fei suddenly said. Wow, Qianli has agreed. That's great. Lady, let's have a drink. The two of them were excited. Get out of my way, you two. Gu Fei was furious. The two of them looked at each other and scratched their heads. Gu Fei continued to speak to Strange Eye. Since you hired him before, you must know how to do it, right? Can I trouble you to tell me? Strange Eye was not stupid. When he heard Gu Fei's question, he immediately understood. You want to lure him out like this? Gu Fei nodded. Strange Eye said, I can't help you with that. Why? It's a mutual agreement. They won't reveal their employer's information, and the employer can't reveal their contact details. I think they've already predicted that you'll use this method, Strange Eye said. This agreement sounds more like a threat, Gu Fei said. Perhaps. Although I won't ask them to hide it from me, I'll still do what I promised, Strange Eye said. Gu Fei nodded. It turned out that she was a very principled girl. Everyone had their own principles, and it was pointless for others to interfere or criticize them. Gu Fei didn't want to be such a pointless person, so he sighed and said, If that's the case, then it's fine. It's fine. That's great. Let's go have a drink. Unscathed in Battle and Yutian Shenming cheered. Help yourselves. I'll continue to walk around, Gu Fei said. Oh, good luck, good luck. Unscathed in battle, and Yutian Shenming did not even look at Gu Fei. They wanted Gu Fei to leave, or else the girls would not even look at them. They only cared if the two girls would reject their invitation. Wait! Strange Eye suddenly shouted. Gu Fei turned around. I'm confused. I was the one who hired them to loot your equipment. You... Strange Eye was confused. Anyone else would be confused too. Even if they did not fight to the death, they should not be as indifferent as Gu Fei, right? Oh, you mean that? Gu Fei turned around again, and his answer embarrassed Strange Pupil once again. Thank you very much for hiring someone to fight with me. If you do this again, I hope you won't hire someone as uncultured as Jian Nanyu. Find someone who is persistent and has a fighting spirit. Thank you. You. Strange Eye was speechless. Gu Fei turned around and was about to leave when he suddenly turned back. By the way, you still want to see my equipment, right? Here it comes. Strange Eye was shocked. He realized that Gu Fei was still going to attack him. He immediately prepared himself to dodge Gu Fei's spell. However, Gu Fei rummaged around in his pocket and took out a small notebook and a pen. He held the night streamer under his arm and held the notebook with one hand and the pen with the other. When everyone was still confused, he was already done. He tore the piece of paper from the notebook and handed it to Strange Eye like a business card. This is the attributes of my equipment. Take it back and admire it. Strange Eye's mind was already blank. He subconsciously took the piece of paper and held it in front of his eyes. The data listed on it should have made any player scream, but his mind was in a mess. He could not see what was in front of him. I'm leaving. Gu Fei waved at Unscathed in Battle and Yutian Shenming. Keep an eye on Yutian. Don't lose him. Aya, hurry up and leave. Yutian Shenming pushed Gu Fei away. How could he say such things in front of a beautiful woman? It was ruining his image. Gu Fei turned around and left. Not long after, he disappeared into the fog. Strange Eye was still holding the piece of paper in a daze. The little girl came up to look at it and exclaimed, "That's amazing. Is he bragging?" Strange Eye woke up from his daze. He was shocked when he saw what was in front of him. Needless to say, the dark moonlight sword's high physical damage and high magic damage, the large list of additional attributes were dazzling. As for the Moonlight Night Spirit Robe, the most eye-catching attribute was the Magic Proficiency +1, that Gu Fei didn't understand at the start, and Imperial Divine Ming didn't understand either. It was not uncommon for equipment to have spell mastery attributes, but most of them were in the form of percentages. After much research by sorcerers, the attribute not only increased the number of magic classes, but it also increased the proficiency of the player's spells. The higher the proficiency of a spell, the more powerful it would be. The spell mastery attribute increased the power of a player's spells by increasing the proficiency of a spell. It could be said that it was the literal meaning of spell mastery. Since the proficiency of a spell increased with the use of the spell, and there was no upper limit to it, it was easy to imagine that the higher the proficiency, the more useful the spell mastery would be. Hence, this attribute was one of the best attributes that all sorcerers would pursue. As for Gu Fei's +1, Yutian Shenming's deduction was right. 1 meant 100%. In other words, if Gu Fei's dual flame flash had 2000 proficiency, then when he wore the Moonlight Robe, he could actually unleash the power of 4000 proficiency. Although the increase in proficiency did not mean that the damage would be doubled, the effect was definitely terrifying. Strange Eye did not know if there would be even more insane attributes like +2 or +3 in the game. At the moment, +1 was the highest that could be achieved. The Moonlight Robe could be worn for the rest of his life with just +1 in spell mastery. Sister, this can't be real, right? The little girl asked after looking at the attributes of the two pieces of equipment. Both of you, this is definitely real. Unbeknownst to them, Imperial Shenming had already walked up to them. He had seen Gu Fei's equipment with his own eyes, so he naturally had a photographic memory. He casually scanned through a few of the items written on the piece of paper, and knew that it was all true. Moreover, he also knew that Gu Fei wasn't someone who would use fake stats to scare people, so he began to pat his chest and vouch for Gu Fei. More importantly, he had finally found the right time to talk to the girls. Come, let's go in and have a drink while we talk. Unscathed in battle was also an expert at seizing opportunities. At this time, Gu Fei was visiting the next tavern. If there was a customer like Strange Eye here, there might be another one. Perhaps they would choose to come here to settle the matter here. As Gu Fei thought about this, he told the others about what had happened in the mercenary channel, especially the idea of getting Jian Nanyo's contact information to lure him out. It was obvious that they would need to rely on Brother Yu. Only his intelligence and connections would be able to take on such a huge responsibility. Although with his understanding of Jian Nanyu, he did not think that Jian Nanyu would fall for such a predictable trap. However, since it was not a big deal, Brother Yu immediately asked his friends to find out more about it. Chapter 430. In the end, Gu Fei had visited all 11 taverns in Xiafog City. These 11 taverns were located in 11 different areas of Xiafog City. Gu Fei had visited almost all of Xiafog City. Unfortunately, he did not see Wandering Sword's party, be it the system or the players, the lobby or the private rooms. He asked some players, but there was no news. No one had seen a party with such a class composition. Sword Demon also sent news that he had visited all 7 resurrection points and asked people from time to time, but to no avail. I can only rely on Brother Yu, Gu Fei thought as he walked out of the last tavern. Looking up, the building opposite the tavern was very familiar and amiable. It was Xiaowu City's wanted mission office. Gu Fei had nothing to do at the moment. He also happened to have the PK points that he had accumulated when he helped Jian Nanyu and the others escape from Linshui City. Hence, he conveniently began his career of washing PK points. Perhaps he would bump into that guy in the process. Gu Fei thought optimistically. At this time, in the small tavern that Gu Fei had first stepped into, Yu Tian Shenming, unscathed in battle, and the Strange Eye sisters were sitting around a table. They had become familiar with each other. After the introduction, Strange Eye's sister was Yin Xiaozhu, one of the 7 idol players of the week. The two of them were real sisters, and they were old players who had entered the game during the open beta. However, the main city that they were born in during the open beta was completely random. Even though they were sisters, they were mercilessly separated by the system. They had only reunited recently. Unscathed in battle had bumped into the two of them on the street, and immediately asked for directions to strike up a conversation with them. For a pair of beautiful sisters, whether it was in real life or in the game, they were already used to this kind of conversation. The two of them did not think much of it, and were prepared to leave it at that. However, Unscathed in battle continued to pester them. He even said to Yin Xiaozhu, "Little girl, do you want uncle to bring you to train?" This made Strange Eye furious, and he was prepared to punish her. In actual combat, Wu Shang wasn't such a lascivious person. He purposely did this to provoke the other party to attack him. Then he could easily take down the two of them by himself. He would display his demeanor as a master, and leave a deep impression on the beautiful woman. He did not know which lousy novel he had read to pick up girls. He did not know if it would work, but he was definitely unlucky. One of the 2 girls he met was a 5 strong players, and the other was a 7 idol players of the week. In the end, he was taken down by the 2 girls. It was a disgrace to the world of girls. In reality, with Unscathed in battle's strength, he had a 50-50 chance of winning if he were to fight seriously. However, he wanted to act like an expert and look down on the 2 sisters. Strange Eye's 5 strong players of the week was no joke. She immediately used her unique spell, 9 Dragons Ice Chamber, and froze Unscathed in battle like an idiot. Fortunately, Gu Fei and Imperial Sky Shenming appeared just in time. Otherwise, whether he would have died here today would have been in the hands of the 2 sisters. Now that they were sitting together, the 2 sisters were initially prejudiced against Unscathed in battle. However, after Yu Tian Shenming asked them about it, and Unscathed in battle explained it from such a perspective, the 2 sisters were both annoyed and amused. If girls could fall for him so easily, why would there be so many leftover men and women in this world? Yin Xiaozhu was obviously more cheerful and lively than her sister, Strange Eye. She was already laughing at Unscathed in battle's lousy way of picking up girls. However, for Zhan Wushang to be able to use such a tactic to pick up girls, it was clear that his pride was his greatest weapon. There was absolutely no mockery in this world that could defeat him. At this moment, he coughed twice and said seriously, "Now that everyone is sitting together happily, let's not talk about fighting and killing anymore." Yu Tianshengming was even more quick-witted. When he heard Yan Xiaozhu laughing at Unscathed in Battle's lust for picking up girls, he immediately seized the opportunity and asked an impure question. "Then how should I pick up girls? How could a young girl like Yan Xiaozhu have any experience in this kind of thing?" In fact, she was just like Unscathed in Battle. She had read all sorts of romance novels and stories about the moods of men and women, and came up with some specious theoretical knowledge. Now she was like a love expert giving lessons to the two of them. Therefore, the three of them chatted happily on this topic. Strange Eye just listened quietly and did not interrupt. Although his expression was no longer as cold as before, there was still no smile on his face. Unscathed in Battle and Yu Tianshengming did not dare to provoke him. Fortunately, his sister was lively enough. While they were chatting happily, the curtain of the fourth private room was suddenly rolled up. Drifting and the other two walked out, obviously having had enough to drink, and were ready to leave. Unscathed in Battle was facing this direction. When he saw Drifting, he quickly greeted him. Drifting came over to greet him as well. Yu Tianshengming turned his face to the side and pretended to be arrogant. However, Yan Xiaozhu was very surprised when she turned her head. "Brother Drifting." Drifting was also surprised to see her. "Huh, it's you. You know each other?" Unscathed in Battle was surprised. Yan Xiaozhu pulled Strange Eye and said, "Sister, he's Drifting, the one who helped me in Stormwind City." Strange Eye stood up and thanked Drifting for his help. Drifting waved his hand and said, "Haha, you're welcome. So you're Xiaozhu's sister, Strange Eye?" Strange Eye nodded. "My sister often talks about you. She says she knows the best sorcerer. She's very proud." "You're flattering me." Drifting quickly acted humble. However, Yu Tianshengming, whose eyes were not looking over, interrupted. "The best sorcerer? Is she talking about you?" "Of course not. Where's Qianli?" Drifting said. What he meant was, not me, and of course not you. Speak of the devil. The door of the tavern opened, and the black-robed sorcerer walked in. He kicked over a bench violently and hit the table with his sword. He pointed at someone and said, "Wanted quest. Get out of here if you have nothing to do." Wow, I haven't seen this in a long time. Yu Tianshengming sighed. He had experienced this many times with Gu Fei when he was farming for the Windchaser boots. Yeah. Drifting was also emotional. He and Gu Fei had gotten to know each other from a similar situation. Clearly, Gu Fei was not famous in Dawn Fog City. His shout immediately caused a strong reaction. The four people at the table stood up and prepared to fight. The other players around them also stood up and dodged. The room was small, and the skills did not have eyes. If they were touched and died, who could they go to? The onlookers quickly formed a group and sized up the arrogant sorcerer curiously. The four people also shouted, "Kid, what are you doing?" They had seen people doing wanted quests before, but they had never seen anyone doing a wanted quest so loudly. "Bounty quest." Gu Fei reminded him again and then flew up. Amidst the screams, flames, whirlwinds, flying arrows, all kinds of skills were displayed in the small space. Strange Eye grabbed her staff and was about to help, but she saw Gu Fei's two friends, Yu Tianshengming and Unscathed in Battle, were sitting calmly, drinking and eating peanuts as if nothing had happened. The sorcerer, Drifting, had no intention of helping either. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and was enjoying the show. Strange Eye was confused, but when she turned back to look at the battlefield, she understood what was going on. While she was thinking about it, Gu Fei had already taken care of the wanted target. He took 2 steps back and knocked on a table shouting, "Mission over. You're welcome, but I don't recommend you to take revenge." There were 4 people left, and they were obviously shocked by Gu Fei's lightning-fast attack. Gu Fei had appeared in front of them in the blink of an eye, and the 4 of them had dodged their attacks. Then with one slash, the 4 of them were down to 1. "Kid, don't leave if you dare. Just you wait." The 3 of them did not dare to act rashly. They stomped their feet and ran out of the tavern. Gu Fei did not stop them. He put his sword back into his pocket and walked toward Yu Tianshengming. "I'm drinking." As he spoke, he grabbed a stool and sat down. He grabbed a few peanuts and started eating. He then turned to Drifting. Why are you standing there? Aren't you going to continue the quest? Yu Tianxunming asked. Didn't you hear him tell me to wait here? Gu Fei kicked Yu Tianxunming. Move to the side, let him sit too. If it were someone else, Yu Tianxunming would have let him sit, but Drifting refused. Drifting did not ask for trouble. He smiled at them and said, You guys sit. I have something to do, so I'm leaving. Something? What is it? Do you need help? Yin Xiaozhu stood up. She seemed eager to repay Drifting's kindness. Drifting smiled helplessly. I'm just being polite. It's nothing, but I have to go. Go. I won't see you out. Yu Tianxunming was getting impatient. Call me if you need anything, Drifting said to Gu Fei. No, call me if you need anything, Gu Fei said. Drifting smiled helplessly again and left. Yu Tianxunming let out a long sigh. He looked like he was relieved. Life is great. They continued chatting, but Yin Xiaozhu's attitude toward Yu Tianxunming was much colder. She had clearly seen through Yu Tianxunming's attitude toward Drifting, so she stood firmly on Drifting's side. She did not like Yu Tianxunming anymore. Yu Tianxunming felt depressed, and his resentment toward Drifting increased. Gu Fei and Strange Eye just sat there and did not speak. Looking at them, he felt that they were really childish. Then looking at Unscathed in Battle, he felt that it would be great if this guy was older. He could be described as old and disrespectful. After a while, Gu Fei had almost finished Unscathed in Battle's plate of peanuts. He looked at the time and said, What's going on? I said to wait, but no one came. Do the players in Xiaofog City like to joke around? Then he poured the remaining peanuts into his palm and slapped the wind-chasing emblem. I'm going to. There was a flash of white light, and Gu Fei teleported away. Strange Eye and Yin Xiaozhu were stunned. Unscathed in Battle and Yu Tianxunming explained helplessly. He went to continue with the wanted quest. Gu Fei returned to the wanted quest office. There was a flash of white light, and he finally stepped into the realm of level 41. At the same time, there was a system notification. The special reward for the wanted quest was triggered again. Chapter 431. Following the system notification, the first thing that was announced was the mission condition that Gu Fei had achieved, 300 wanted players, and it was emphasized that it was 300 people with no duplicate IDs. The second condition was relatively insignificant. There were many players in the game, and it was not so coincidental to always run into the same person on a wanted mission. In Gu Fei's career as a wanted criminal, he had not seen many accidents like this. They were all in Cloud City. After the conditions were announced, it was time to give out the reward. Gu Fei thought that it would be the vulgar Windchaser XX again, but this time the system had a new idea and gave him a wanted license. This thing was not a piece of equipment, but a mission item, and it was also used for wanted missions. According to the instructions, when accepting a wanted mission, show the wanted license to the management NPC of the wanted office, and you would be able to see the hidden information that normal players could not see during the process of looking up the mission. It was limited to the user. Gu Fei touched his pocket, and there was indeed a hardcover book in the blank space. He took it out and looked at it. It was black, and the words "Wanted License" were written in silver font on the cover. He flipped it open, and on the left page was a badge. A thorny thorn wound into the shape of a shackle. This badge was familiar to Gu Fei, as all the wanted office's door signs had this pattern. As for the right page, the first line was the license number, 1. The second line was the holder's name, Qianli 1 Drunk. The third line was the holder's profession, Mage. Gu Fei seemed to have realized something. It turned out that he was now a VIP user of the wanted mission office. This pass was specially issued to encourage him. Therefore, Gu Fei wanted to see what kind of special treatment he would receive as a VIP. After waving the ID at the NPC, he clearly saw the NPC nod at him. When he accepted the mission, he saw the legendary hidden information. What was hidden information? Player's name, profession. At this time, in Gu Fei's eyes, the large number of wanted players listed in the mission office were no longer just numbers and PK value. Each number had a name and profession behind it. This made Gu Fei overjoyed. The first thing he thought of was that he could use this to find out the whereabouts of Azure Blade. But after flipping through it for a while, he felt dizzy. Killing people in the game was not against the law. Instead, it was a great pleasure. In a main city with tens of thousands of people, there were usually thousands of people killed. A main city like Moonlit Night City, which had a strong culture, was even larger. At that moment, Gu Fei didn't know if Jian Nanyu and the others were registered in Xiaowu City. Anyway, he just casually looked through the city's quests. A long string of numbers, names, and occupations made Gu Fei dizzy. It was a pity that the way the quest list was arranged was the same. It could only be arranged according to the PK value from high to low. If only it could be arranged by name. I wonder if I can search it? Gu Fei thought to himself. Now that he could look up names, he could just type Jian Nanyu to pull out his quest. This was very logical. Thinking of this, Gu Fei went to ask the NPC. At first, he was worried that the NPC wouldn't understand what he was asking. Who knew that the NPC would understand once he heard it? The NPC told Gu Fei, "Your wanted license level is not high enough." Gu Fei was stunned. Only then did he understand. It turned out that he was also a beginner VIP. There were higher user levels and privileges. Thinking about it, didn't the wind-chasing emblem upgrade when the quest was completed 200 times? It seemed that this wanted license would also increase when he reached 600 people on the wanted list. This was obviously not something that could be done in one go. Moreover, who knew if the next upgrade would be the search function? Gu Fei sighed. He went back and continued to look through the quests in order. This method was a bit stupid, but it was a test of patience. He was afraid that those people didn't have PK value now. That would be a complete waste of time. However, he was more afraid that after he found the part with PK value of 2, this guy would suddenly kill 3 people and with a whoosh, his PK value would increase to 3. That would be even worse. He couldn't be that unlucky, right? Gu Fei thought as he continued to look. He stood foolishly at the wanted mission board for more than half an hour. Gu Fei checked through the wanted mission board of Xiaofog City from top to bottom. None of the names of Jian Nan and the others that he knew were on the list. Could it be that they didn't register here? Gu Fei thought. Unfortunately, Xiaofog City didn't provide Linshui City's wanted mission board. Overall mission board? Gu Fei turned around and left the wanted mission board. Checking the overall mission board was an impossible task. A conservative estimate of the number of players on the board was over 100,000. He greeted everyone in the mercenary group channel. Yutian Shenming and Unscathed in Battle were encouraging the strange pupil sisters to be their tour guides and guide them to familiarize themselves with the situation here. Of course, this was just an excuse. The two were just trying to extend their time with the girls. As for Sword Demon, after running past the revival point without being discovered, he had already started doing quests in the city. He earned experience while continuing to inquire about Jian Nan and the others' whereabouts. As expected of the most diligent and responsible person in the group. As soon as Brother Yu asked him to inquire about information, he went offline again and still hadn't returned. Han family young master was still sitting in the tavern. Gu Fei felt that this guy was always in the tavern. He really didn't know how this kind of person could become one of the top 10 priests. Was he worthy of the other priests who worked themselves to death as nannies? How is it? Any news on Jian Nan? This person sat in the tavern and did nothing, acting like a boss. Gu Fei didn't hear back from the first tavern. The moment he sent a message, Han family young master asked him to report on his work. There's nothing else. Gu Fei said. There was silence. We can't even confirm if they are registered in Xiaofog City. Gu Fei was furious. If he could confirm Jian Nan's registered address, Gu Fei felt that with the wanted license in his hand, he would be able to catch Jian Nan sooner or later as long as he was patient. They were in the business of robbing, so it was impossible for them not to have PK points. Furthermore, he was doing wanted quests every day. If he searched for Jian Nan for half an hour every day, he would definitely bump into Jian Nan. When did he meet up with the strange eye? Asked the son of the Han family. Gu Fei didn't ask strange pupil this question. Naturally, he asked unscathed in battle and Yutian Shenming, who were still stuck to the strange pupil sisters. Strange pupil didn't hide anything and told them the truth. It was around 8:20. Jiannan's group of 7 arrived at the waterfront at 6:03 and left at 6:09. We walked for 1 hour and 47 minutes from the waterfront to Xia Fog City. Jiannan's group might be more familiar with the route than we are, so we can save some time. Sword Demon. How long does it take to walk from the city gate to the nearest resurrection point? Han Family Young Master asked. About 10 minutes, Sword Demon said. We left the shore at 6:09, so they walked for 1 hour and 40 minutes. They arrived at Xia Fog City at 7:49 and registered at the resurrection point at 8. They went to the tavern where they met Strange Pupil 20 minutes later. Time seems a little tight, Han Family Young Master said. Did they arrive at the tavern first, or did Strange Pupil arrive first? Unscathed in battle and Yutian Shenming asked again. Strange Pupil arrived first. What time did they meet? How did they meet? What time did they arrive at the tavern? And what time did they leave? Han Family Young Master asked again. You can ask them yourself. Unscathed in battle and Yutian Shenming were very depressed. They were questioning a girl like she was a criminal. How were they supposed to woo her? Qianli, you go. Han Family Young Master acted like a boss again. Why me? Gu Fei didn't want to do the job of recording someone's statement. Because you're the one who wants to kill Jiannan to earn money, not me, Han Family Young Master said. Gu Fei had no choice but to go to the tavern himself. Yutian Shenming and Unscathed in battle had already foreshadowed this for him. They told Strange Pupil that Gu Fei would ask her some questions in the future. Ahem. Gu Fei still felt a little uncomfortable after meeting Strange Pupil. He sat down and cleared his throat. I have a few simple questions about Jiannan to ask you. Do I have the right to remain silent? Strange Pupil asked. You don't have to say it if you don't want to, Gu Fei said. Strange Pupil nodded. Gu Fei then asked, what time did Jiannan meet you? 8 o'clock. How did you meet him? I was in the tavern at the time, so I asked him to come. What time did he arrive here? Gu Fei asked. Around 8:20. What time did he leave? 5 minutes later. Fuck. Gu Fei slammed the table. Strange Pupil seemed to understand. Then you arrived in less than 5 minutes. That's right. Gu Fei wanted to cry, but no tears came out. It turned out that he and Jiannan had almost bumped into each other. On the other side of the channel, the young master of the Han family, who was listening to the live broadcast of the Imperial Divine Cry, had already made a conclusion. He has an appointment with Strange Pupil at 8, and will be at the tavern 20 minutes later. From the looks of it, it seems like he has already registered at the revival point. That's right, Gu Fei said. But that doesn't mean they will stay here for a long time. They might have already left. Han family's young master said. Left. When Gu Fei heard this word, he suddenly remembered something. He stood up and ran to the entrance of the tavern. The others did not know what he was doing, so they followed him. Gu Fei looked to the left and right of the tavern. He looked at Unscathed in battle. Wuxiang, you came from this way, right? Gu Fei pointed to the street on the right. Unscathed in battle nodded. Yutian and I came from this way. Gu Fei pointed to the left. When we came, we did not see Jiannan. Are there any crossings between these two streets? Gu Fei asked Strange Pupil. There are 2 crossings. Strange Pupil pointed to the left and right. The one on the left goes north and the one on the right goes south. Where do these 2 streets lead to? Gu Fei asked. The one on the right is a normal alley. I don't know where it leads to. The one on the left goes north and you will reach the mercenary building, Strange Pupil said. Gu Fei immediately pushed Yutian Shenming. Go to that alley and ask around. Yutian Shenming's face turned pale. Are you asking me to die? Gu Fei was stunned for a moment. Then he realized that he was an idiot on the way here. Making him move alone would make him wish he was dead. So he pushed Zhang Wuxiang and said, the 2 of you go together. The 2 obviously did not have enough to chat with the girl. But now that they had something to do, it was not appropriate for them to refuse. They immediately headed in that direction. As for Gu Fei, He thanked Strange Eye and hurried towards the path on the left that led to the mercenary building. One of the two roads was the one that Jian Nanyu must have taken. Perhaps he had left some traces. Gu Fei thought. Chapter 432. In the mercenary building of Xiaoyu City, Jian Nanyu and his group of 7 were looking through missions. They were looking for missions posted by players. For example, they were looking for help in PK or killing for loot. It wasn't common for a big business like Battlemage equipment to happen. Jian Nanyu and his group often did some small business to earn some money. More importantly, it was to accumulate customers. Jian Nanyu's way of doing business was to start with these small missions to gain a certain degree of trust and contact with the customers. Once there was a big business, the other party would naturally think of him. And in the process of small business dealings, Jian Nanyu would add each customer as a friend, and then carefully note down the business dealings between each customer and himself. These were the leverage he used to ensure a harmonious relationship between both parties. Jian Nanyu was indeed hated for killing and robbing, but don't forget that every time he did such a business, there must be someone behind the scenes controlling it. He was just a knife, and the hands holding the knife behind the scenes were no better than him. Jian Nanyu had sharpened his knife into a double-edged sword. He kept the possibility of retaliation at any time. The agreement he made with each customer was to remind them that he also had leverage over them. Jian Nanyu's business network was gradually expanding with this as the foundation. The way to contact him to do business was really simple. It was just a private message. Jian Nanyu would never refuse the requests of the players who entered the client group in his friend list. This was because Jian Nanyu had information on these people. He believed that everyone could betray others, but they would never betray themselves. These customers were Jian Nanyu's main source of income. However, if he wanted his business to flourish, the bigger the customer group, the better. Jian Nanyu had 2 ways. One was for the big customers in the customer group to directly introduce customers to him. The other was to find customers himself, like in the initial stage. Then he would slowly develop from a small customer to a big customer, and finally enter the customer's friend list. This development process was actually the process of Jian Nanyu using leverage over others. At the moment, in the mercenary building, they were looking for small customers who had the potential to become big customers. Their business was initially established by this method. They had accumulated a set of experience in identifying potential small customers. The quest content was rather vague. It wasn't a group quest, but an individual quest. Most importantly, one had to be rich. Poor players weren't qualified to become Southbound Sword's customer. At this time, the 7 of them were rummaging around, and from time to time, they would discuss in the channel. As a group, it was not uncommon for people to stick to their own opinions. Among the 7 of them, Azuma, Flaming Cloak, and Blackwater were leaning towards the one who was looking for equipment. Glue and another cleric were leaning towards the one who was looking for help in PvP. Inukagami and Lucky Knight were leaning towards the one who had a normal quest, but a generous reward. Thus, the 3 targets had been identified. After memorizing their contact information, the 7 of them prepared to leave. They did not directly accept the mission at the mercenary building because the 7 of them were not mercenary groups, and did not have the authority to do so. The fog was still as thick as ever. The 7 of them stepped out of the mercenary building, and took a deep breath. They suddenly felt as if they had been reborn. Then let's begin. Azuma took out the list that he had just copied and said, Blackwater, you and Flaming Cloak will contact this peach. Inukagami and I will look for this soft hands. The 3 of you will look for this. Damn, what is this word? Haha, you're so uncultured. Finally escaping from the hunting net, they were in a good mood and started joking. Glue laughed at Azuma. He took the piece of paper and his face turned green. He passed it to the next person, and the next person's face turned green. Azuma turned his head and looked at Flaming Cloak. What did you write? Flaming Cloak was the one who had copied the name. Flaming Cloak said helplessly, I just copied it. This is how the Martian language is. I don't recognize it. What the hell is this? Blackwater held the piece of paper and squinted his eyes. as if he was hoping that the sunlight would give him strength. In the end, the 7 of them shook their heads awkwardly. They could not enter the name into the search bar since they did not recognize it. Naturally, they could not find this player. In the end, Jiannan handed the note back to Huarini. Peach, let the 3 of them look for her. You two go look for this Martian. The other 2 groups gloated at Blackwater and Flaming Coat, while contacting the people they were looking for. However, neither Peach nor Soft-Hearted Hands added her as a friend. It was a common situation, so the 2 groups went to the mailbox to send the letter, leaving Blackwater and Fire Blazing Clothes to read the letter. Let's not talk about recognizing it. Even if you do, how did you type it? Huolini asked. How would I know? Blackwater was annoyed. We have to ask around. Huorini said. Look, there's a pretty girl over there. Blackwater pointed somewhere. Apart from being a robber, Wandering Sword's group of 7 were no different from normal players. They also had hobbies. For example, picking up girls was an extremely popular activity in the game. There was no lack of enthusiasts among the 7 of them. Starting from this pretty girl, Huorini and Blackwater began to ask pitifully everyone they met along the way. In the end, not only did no one recognize them, they even received looks of disdain from others. For the sake of their career, they endured everything. The 2 of them clenched their fists and continued to search for the meaning of the Martian words. After walking down a long street, the 2 of them found nothing. Their mouths were dry. Let's go to the tavern for a drink. There are many people there, and we can ask around too, Blackwater suggested. Yes, and I think we should find the right solution. This kind of words is what non-mainstream people are good at, so we should ask the non-mainstream people. Look, it was unwise of you to ask that old man, Huolini said. That old man pretended to know it. It's fine if he doesn't recognize it, but he insisted that it's Oracle Bone script, Blackwater said. What input method can we use to input Oracle Bone script? Huolini asked. I don't know. Blackwater shook her head. The 2 of them chatted as they walked. Along the way, they met other players who might know something about the Oracle Bone script, but they still found nothing. Finally, they were about to reach the tavern. They hadn't met anyone along the way. The street was empty, and it was surrounded by thick fog. As foreigners, the 2 of them weren't used to this scene, and they felt uncomfortable all over. It's been a while, Blackwater said. Yeah. Huolini looked around. Finally, a dark figure appeared in the fog, and the 2 of them were delighted. Look, someone is finally here, Blackwater exclaimed. Who cares? Let's go and ask, Huolini said. The 2 of them didn't talk to anyone for a long time. As they quickened their pace, the fog became transparent, and the dark figure appeared in front of them. Blackwater held the note in her hand, and wanted to use swift movement to meet the figure. However, the moment their eyes met, the 2 of them stopped. One of them was surprised, while the other was delighted. Gu Fei was very happy. He had only walked a few steps after leaving the tavern. How did they meet again so soon? Did Jian Nanyu leave such a huge trace after leaving the tavern? However, the 2 of them didn't seem to be the ones he wanted. Why are you here? Huolini and Blackwater said in unison. They had been cautious along the way. Glue was so tired that his eyes were about to bleed, and he was sure that no one was following them. After all, binoculars were something that the players didn't know existed in the game. Hee, what a coincidence. Where's Jian Nanyu? Gu Fei said. Huolini and Blackwater didn't say anything, but they quickly notified the other members of the group. That bitch is here again. Jian Nanyu, who received this news, wanted to cry but had no tears. As far as he was concerned, he hadn't done anything to Gu Fei at all. Why was this fellow pestering him endlessly? Can the 2 of you escape? Jian Nan's tone was filled with pessimism, directly using the word escape. It's difficult. Huolini said. Ever since they witnessed Gu Fei's 900 degrees dual blaze flash at the shore of Waterside City, they finally understood how terrifying Gu Fei was. Even if the 7 of them were to fight him head-on, they still felt that their chances of winning were slim. They had to resort to some unorthodox tricks to defeat him. Jian Nanyu finally decided to give up on the mission of looting Gu Fei's equipment. This was because looting equipment was a long-term and arduous task. He did not know how many times he would have to kill Gu Fei in the process. Every time, he would need to make meticulous arrangements and clever arrangements. Jian Nanyu felt that he was not a genius enough to come up with such a complex formation. After weighing the pros and cons, he finally decided to give up. It was too risky to deal with Gu Fei, and they could easily be trapped by him if they entered the market rashly. As such, they might as well give up on the mission. But now, it seemed that they had already been trapped by Gu Fei. They had actually chased him all the way here. "What do you want?" Huolini roared. Blackwater felt a chill down her spine. Huolini used a sentence commonly used in idol dramas. Even though they were facing a powerful enemy and their levels were at stake, she couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Gu Fei didn't notice it and said calmly, "I'm looking for Jian Nanyu. Where is he?" "Oh, he went to the west gate," Huolini said casually. "Is that so?" Gu Fei smiled. "Is it convenient for him to come over?" I don't think it's convenient," Huolini said. "Why?" "Because he doesn't want to see you." "Does he want to see you at the revival point?" "I wonder if he's going to the Mage Academy or the Rogue Guild," Gu Fei threatened. Even though they didn't want to die, there was nothing they could do. "Whatever you want." Gu Fei unsheathed his sword, but the two of them wouldn't close their eyes and wait for death. Huolini pushed Blackwater away. "You run. I'll block him." Blackwater was a rogue after all, and she could escape from Gu Fei's clutches with quick movement. As for Huolini, she would talk about it in the next chapter. Chapter 433. The sword-wielding Gu Fei quickly closed the distance between the two. Huolini quickly raised his staff to chant, "But Fire Beacon City, right?" "I know." Gu Fei answered for him. Huolini was ashamed. He only fought against Gu Fei a few times, yet his tricks were all seen through. Although there was nothing new about it, he still had to use it. "Fire Beacon City, rise!" Huolini shouted. Since he was seen through by the opponent, there was no need to hide it anymore. He shouted it out loud to increase the momentum. After the chant, a wall of fire appeared behind Gu Fei. Then Gu Fei waved his sword and pointed. "Wall of electricity." Huolini's face was full of tears. So it turned out that no one had any new tricks. He looked back and saw that Blackwater's path of retreat was blocked by the wall of electricity, so he could only look back at Huolini. "Time to go all out." Huolini roared as he lunged at Gu Fei. He felt that Gu Fei was too powerful and couldn't be defeated with conventional methods, so he had to use unconventional methods. For a mage, the unconventional method was to not use spells and instead use physical combat. Thus, Huolini rushed towards Gu Fei while swinging his fists. The ending of Huoqiani was so sad that even the author did not have the heart to continue describing it. Gu Fei felt angry when he saw the mad dog's behavior. How could the punches and kicks be so disorderly? Therefore, Gu Fei stepped forward and beat Huolini up with a few punches and kicks in a very methodical manner. The pitiful Huolini waved his hands around in the beginning, but later on he could only use his arms to protect his face. It was a great pain to be able to survive such a beating. Gu Fei was tired of fighting with Huolini. With a casual push of his hand and a hook of his leg, Huolini was flipped upside down. Ignoring Huolini, Gu Fei turned around and ran towards the Blackwater. Gu Fei's electric wall didn't last as long as Huolini's Fire Beacon City, and it also didn't have a short cooldown, so he had to hurry up and deal with Blackwater. However, Blackwater knew that they were no match for Huoqiani, so they didn't try to risk their lives. After all, Huoqiani's miserable ending was still there. Blackwater used his agile footwork to move back and forth in the small space between Fire Beacon City and the electric wall. He was determined to not let Gu Fei get close to him. Gu Fei's speed was slightly slower than Blackwater's. He seemed to be at his wit's end and could only deal with him patiently. Blackwater ran back and forth. Seeing that Gu Fei was exasperated but couldn't do anything to her, she suddenly felt very happy. It seemed that this guy wasn't that scary. If the glue was here, wouldn't the kite be killed? Blackwater became excited as he thought about it. He felt that he might have found a way to take care of Gu Fei. At this time, the electric wall flashed and disappeared. Blackwater thought that it was time to escape, but Blackwater looked at Huolini on the ground. This guy was motionlessly lying on the ground as if he was dead. At this time, Huolini slightly raised his head and glanced at Blackwater. Then he signaled towards the direction of the electric wall. "You want me to run over there?" Blackwater was ready to run away after the electric current wall disappeared. So he tried his best to stay near the electric current wall. Now that the opportunity was right in front of him, he found that Huolini's eyes were conveying this message to him. Blackwater was a bit puzzled, but he quickly noticed that even though Huolini was still lying on the ground, the staff in his hand was quietly pointing in a certain direction. In the blink of an eye, Blackwater understood Huolini's intention, and immediately ran towards the direction of the electric wall. Gufei still chased after him, but he didn't know that Huolini was quietly finishing his chant. Fire Beacon City. Another electric wall appeared behind Gufei, accompanied by Blackwater's laughter. This was Huolini's idea. After luring Gufei over, he would use another Fire Beacon City to separate himself from Gufei. This way he would have enough time to escape. Even though Gufei could teleport, it was clear that his technique was still on cooldown, or he didn't have enough mana. In short, if he could use it, why would he need to run and play with Blackwater like this? As for Heishui, even though he was separated from Gufei, at this moment, the first Fire Beacon City was about to disappear. Heishui only needed to stall for a bit longer before he could escape with his speed. Cloud Mist City was shrouded in fog, so escaping was much easier than chasing. Thus, the two of them would be safe and sound. Naturally, this was the best outcome. "Brat, you didn't expect this, right?" Blackwater proudly laughed while running towards the first Fire Beacon City. On the other side, Huolini leisurely crawled up from the ground and confidently snapped his fingers at Blackwater. "Old Black, that electric wall will disappear in 7 seconds. Get ready, I'll be going first." "Go." Blackwater purposely loudly answered, and turned around to provoke Gufei. Gufei was also looking at him with a smile. This smile really shouldn't appear on the face of someone who was being teased. Blackwater was a bit absent-minded, but he heard Gufei say, "You are about to die. Why are you still so happy?" "Die." Blackwater sneered and didn't care. Everything was calculated very clearly. Gufei wouldn't be able to catch up to him before the electric wall disappears. In front of such an obvious fact, this guy was still bluffing, truly senseless. Blackwater silently counted in his mind. 7 6 5 4 3 2 1. According to his estimation, it would only take 2 seconds for the electric wall to disappear. It was only 2 seconds, he could easily make it through. While rushing towards the electric wall, Blackwater looked back and saw that Gufei was also chasing after him. "Keep your distance, don't panic, he can't catch up." Blackwater subconsciously became a bit anxious, and quickly reminded himself. Then he saw Gufei stretch out his left hand towards him, a cluster of lightning gathering in his palm. What is this? Blackwater just had this thought in his mind when the lightning had already shot out. Blackwater quickly turned around and swung his dagger to block it. A mage's spell could indeed be destroyed by physical attacks. Even if it couldn't completely destroy it, it could at least reduce some of the damage, which was better than taking it head-on. The lightning flashed, and there seemed to be the faint sound of thunder. Blackwater's dagger accurately struck the ball of light. The first thing he did was to pay attention to his HP. It had dropped, but not by much. His defense was effective. Blackwater was very pleased. But then he noticed that the moment the ball of light was shattered, it created an extremely strong repulsive force. Blackwater's people couldn't help but retreat. They were indeed retreating and not flying. Blackwater felt that his legs were still pressed against the ground. But it was as if he was wearing roller skates. What is going on? Blackwater was confused for a bit, but he suddenly remembered something as his face turned pale. He looked back and saw that the Fire Beacon City's electric wall was right in front of him. If he kept retreating like this, wouldn't he be rushing straight in? "Fuck, stop for me!" Blackwater roared, but no matter how hard he tried, his retreat didn't slow down at all. In his panic, he saw that Gufei had stopped chasing. He gently blew his palm and smilingly explained, "Lightning palm, it has a repelling effect." Blackwater gave up. No one could go against the system settings. Stopping at this moment was futile. Blackwater didn't want to watch himself being pushed into the fire pit, so the only thing he could do was to close his eyes. 0. Blackwater's countdown finally reached its end. He opened his eyes and saw that the fog was still the same, but the street was no longer there. He had returned to the Bandit Union's courtyard. On the street, Blackwater and Fire Beacon City disappeared at the same time without a trace. Gu Fei turned around and walked to the front of the second firewall to look at the other side. Sure enough, the running fiery coat stopped at this time. He turned around and saw a pitch-black figure standing behind the jumping flames. The fog is very thick over there. Can you see clearly? Gu Fei shouted at him. Fiery coat didn't answer. Your friend was careless and rushed into your firewall, Gu Fei said. Fiery coat didn't answer. He knew that Blackwater couldn't have been careless, so Gu Fei must have done something. He suddenly realized that it was because he received a notification from the system. His PK value increased by 1 point. In a trance, he hoped that Gu Fei had contributed this PK point to him. But unfortunately, as soon as he turned his head, he heard Gu Fei's voice. Fiery Coat wanted nothing more than to cut Gu Fei into pieces, but he knew that his impulsiveness would only result in him being beaten to the ground again. Gritting her teeth, Horeni turned around and disappeared into the mist. Haha, you think you can run away like this? It's no use. A VIP like me will immediately know where you are. Gu Fei took out his wanted license, and after admiring it for a moment, he hurried towards the wanted mission office. It would take 2 hours to erase 1 PK value. Gu Fei believed that Fiery Coat wouldn't turn himself in and go to jail. Even if Fiery Coat wanted to erase his PK value, Fiery Coat wouldn't be 1 step ahead of Gu Fei. Gu Fei arrived at the wanted office in the blink of an eye. He showed the NPC his wanted license and began to browse through the quests. Fiery Coat had just used PK value for a while, and his PK value was 1 again. Gu Fei flipped to the last page and started searching. If there was no PK value, it could only mean that these guys were not registered in Xiaoyu City. The result was gratifying. When Gu Fei flipped to the second last page, he saw Fiery Coat's name. Profession Mage. After confirming that there was no PK value, Gu Fei accepted the PK without hesitation. Coordinates XXX. Gu Fei announced in the mercenary channel. What's that? The others asked. Fiery Coat's coordinates, Gu Fei answered. You met him? Just kill him. Why did you send the coordinates? The others asked. Jiannan is my ultimate target. Fiery Coat is now my spy, Gu Fei said. You convinced him to betray you? The others were in disbelief. Gu Fei was good at inflicting physical damage. Was he an expert in hypnosis, too? So, Gu Fei gave them an introduction to the wanted license and how he had made the flaming shirt gain PK value. Jiannan is dead for sure this time, the others exclaimed. Chapter 434. Horeni, who thought he had escaped from danger, was in a bad mood. Although Blackwater didn't blame him at all, he felt very guilty in his heart. In that case, Blackwater had a chance to escape. However, in order to escape, he let Blackwater delay a little longer. As a result, he died in his own firewall. Horeni blamed himself deeply. But for brothers like them, apologies must be expressed with actions. Verbal apologies would only make others feel that they were pretentious. This guy is too despicable. Horeni shouted to his brothers while running in the fog. Why is he here? Is he chasing after us? Jiannan couldn't figure it out. That's impossible. No one followed us along the way. How did they know we came to Xiaoyu City? Glue was also puzzled. Is there a traitor? Jiannan was used to walking on the edge of a knife. He was used to being cautious and thinking from the worst possible angle. Now that he couldn't explain why their whereabouts were exposed, this thought almost involuntarily drilled into his mind. But Jiannan quickly shook his head to deny it. The 7 of them had known each other for a long time. If one of them was disloyal, they wouldn't have lasted until today. Moreover, the restraints that Jiannan's group had with their clients also existed among the 7 of them. People might betray others, but at least they wouldn't betray themselves. The 7 of them were already in a relationship of honor and disgrace, so it was impossible to say that there was a traitor. I'm absolutely sure that no one followed us along the way. Glue strongly expressed his position, dispelling everyone's doubts on this issue. If that's the case, there's only one possibility. Jian Nanyu said. What? Among the people we met in Xiaoyu City, someone happened to recognize us, and at the same time, he was a friend of those guys. Jian Nanyu said. It's not surprising that they had friends, but isn't it a bit exaggerated that they would recognize us? Even in Linshui City, there aren't many people who know us. How could someone know us here? Glue said. Jian Nanyu pondered for a moment, then asked Huoreni. Reni, did you get rid of him? Yes. The firewall stopped him. It's very easy to get rid of the fog here. Huoreni said confidently. His confidence wasn't wrong, but it was a pity that something beyond their understanding had appeared this time. A wanted license. In the scene with Child Elite Group, Wandering Jiannan, and the others repeatedly stumbled into things they didn't know about. Each of them was bleeding profusely, but they still didn't know why. Don't panic, everyone. Jiannan said. This city is very good for hiding. We can only recognize each other when we are 30 meters apart. We can't even see a figure 40 meters away. It won't be easy for him to find us. Everyone nodded in agreement. But I really can't take this lying down. Let's find a way to kill this guy. Huoreni said indignantly. There will be a chance. Jiannan comforted Huoreni. This guy is so arrogant. Sooner or later, we will receive a mission to kill him. At that time, we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And then we can set him up. Huoreni sighed. He had to admit that Jian Nanyu was indeed the leader of the 7 of them. He was the most composed one among the 7 of them. Blackwater, how about you? Are there any abnormalities? Jiannan asked. I didn't find anything. The experienced Blackwater didn't rush out after reviving in the Thieves' Guild. He calmly sneaked out of the guild's courtyard and observed from a corner. He didn't find anyone suspicious. Unless the other party was a thief in stealth like him, there was no one lying in ambush. Don't leave in a hurry. Let's observe for a bit longer, Jiannan said. Understood. Blackwater nodded. They couldn't detect a thief's stealth, which was one of their biggest regrets at the moment. Rumor had it that this video mage had anti-stealth equipment. This guy was really full of treasures. However, the 7 of them couldn't avoid this guy in time. They really didn't want to steal his equipment. Besides that, they also heard that one of the top 5 roaches, Water Depth, also knew anti-stealth. However, it was said that he had a skill that couldn't be dropped, so the 7 of them didn't want to steal his equipment. What do we do now? Glue asked. Pretend he doesn't exist. Continue doing what you were doing, Jiannan said. Did you hear back from Honey Peach? Not yet, Glue said. There was still no reply from Jiannan. Just as he was about to say something, Dao Xiangmu suddenly shouted, There's a reply. Soft hands? Yep. Dao Xiangmu opened the mail and quickly scanned through it. The message they sent had already stated their intentions. The other party had opened the friend button and invited them to talk in detail. This time, the negotiation would be carried out by Jiannan. This was also a small show that the 7 of them had purposely arranged. After all, Jiannan's name was well known in the game. His sudden appearance would give the other party a sense of surprise. For some reason, the other party's trust in him would increase. Some might even feel flattered. The person called Soft Hands was such a person. After Jiannan added him as a friend, he quickly added Jiannan as a friend. Before Jiannan could tell him that he was the person who had just contacted him. This guy had already sent him a greeting message. Jiannan smiled faintly. He had experienced this kind of situation more than once or twice. He no longer felt anything about other people's admiration for him. He only knew that facing such a person, their business would be more successful. Sure enough, after Jiannan explained his intentions, his hands went soft, and he was overwhelmed by the favor. He was one of the top 5 experts, yet he had actually accepted a mission from a nobody like him. Speaking of which, this mission had just been posted. As expected of an expert, his eyes were as bright as a torch. He immediately picked up on this mission. Soft Hands didn't forget to fantasize about his own aura. In the end, he finally asked a serious question. Aren't you from Linshui City? Why are you here at Xiaowu City? Hehe, nothing much. I was bored, so I came out for a stroll. Jiannan easily dodged the question. Under the halo of an expert, the other party almost worshipped his words as if they were gods. Jiannan couldn't help but think, if the other party knew that he was hunted down in Linshui City and fled to Xiaoyu City, what would he think? After that, the discussion naturally went smoothly. As for why they didn't accept the mission directly from the mercenary building, Jiannan bluntly said that he wasn't a mercenary group and couldn't accept it. It was acceptable to say that he didn't want the system to earn the service fee. However, it would make people feel that he was stingy, which wasn't good for his image. Then both parties agreed to meet at the North Gate. Soft Hands was looking for someone to help him complete a mission. He didn't specify the name of the mission in the mercenary building. He just wrote it as an ordinary mission with a high price tag. This was the main reason why Jiannan and the others were interested. Moreover, they were willing to pay so much for an ordinary mission. It would be a waste if they didn't develop such a sucker as a customer. North Gate, everyone gather. Blackwater, come over too. Jiannan sent a message to everyone. This was also their habit. They would try their best to show off their strength to the customers they met for the first time, and leave a deep impression on them. Jiannan and the others started to gather. However, they didn't know that the child elite group was also moving towards the fire-blazing coat after the coordinates of Gu Fei's wanted mission were refreshed. Brother, you also returned to the game. He said dejectedly that he didn't get any information. After learning the situation, he immediately asked to see Gu Fei's wanted license. Move forward with the fire-blazing coat as the center. We'll meet sooner or later. Gu Fei sent the coordinates of the fire-blazing coat to Brother Yu. The two groups moved in the fog of Xiaofog City. Jiannan and the others were the first to gather. They finally saw the person who might become their future god of fortune's hands go soft. This guy was also a warrior. When he saw the legendary expert, Jiannan, his eyes turned into stars. Jiannan was easygoing and generous. He patted his soft shoulders and said, "Tell me the details of your mission as we walk." In the end, Soft Hands smiled mysteriously. "Actually, it's not a mission. It's a boss. I found it by accident, but I don't have the strength to fight it." "Oh." Jiannan replied calmly. He wasn't like the other players who would have their eyes light up when they heard about a boss. The other 6 were also calm. Soft Hands observed the expressions of the 7 people. He blindly worshipped and trusted the top experts. It was as if a high level meant a good character. This seemed to have something in common with the students in school who had good grades as well as good character. At this moment, when the 7 of them heard about the boss, their calm expressions dispelled his last bit of doubt. He felt that Jiannan's team definitely wasn't the kind of people who would have evil thoughts at the sight of money. In fact, the 7 of them had long since cultivated to the point where they were above the common people. Evil thoughts at the sight of money? They hadn't even seen the money yet. What were they thinking about? That was too lowly. After the boss died, they would see what it dropped. Only then would the 7 reveal their true colors. If they really needed something, such as anti-stealth equipment or skills, they wouldn't hesitate to have evil thoughts at the sight of money. At this moment, Soft Hands wasn't even Jiannan's client. They wouldn't trust this person for now. Poor Soft Hands didn't know that he had entered a tiger's den. He obediently led the 7 of them on their journey to kill the boss. At the same time, Gu Fei and the others were also gathering in this direction. Due to the difference in movement speed, the distance between each other was quite large. Han Family Young Master noticed the latest changes in the coordinates of the Flaming Cloak and suddenly said, "They might have already met up. The Flaming Cloak's movement speed has slowed down." Only when the team was moving would they intentionally slow down in order to accommodate their slow movement speed. Also, there's a lot of movement speed this time. Brother Yu calculated and said, "With this movement speed, I think it's a warrior or cleric below level 35. Why are they fooling around with a noob?" The experts in the elite group were also confused. Chapter 435. The fog outside of Xiaofog City seemed to be thicker than the inside of the city. Visibility was further reduced. A conservative estimate was that you could see people within 25 meters. Beyond that, you could see a human figure. Beyond that, there was fog that was so thick that it wouldn't disperse. The weather conditions in Xiaowu City made it very likely that one's hands would go soft. This was because you would only be able to confirm that it was a boss within 25 meters. If you were unlucky and brushed past the boss outside 25 meters, you would think that it was a normal trash. Because of this, the boss location wasn't hidden. It was just that because of the thick fog, other players didn't go within 25 meters of it. Hans memorized the coordinates. At this moment, while leading the way, he didn't hold back as he introduced the boss to Azure Blade and the others. Misty Assassin Andrew Su. From the name alone, it was an assassin that changed from a thief to a thief. Hans went soft online to search for information on the boss. The official information he received was that it was trapped here by the fog of Xiaofog City. It was a boss unique to Xiaofog City. Its strength, level, skills, and other official information were all unknown. Although Hans had come into contact with it and fought it, the information he had was also unknown. It went around to my back and stabbed me, and I was killed, he said, his hands weak and ashamed. This was a common problem for noobs. When they encountered a boss, they would be so excited that they didn't know what was going on. They would boldly try to fight it alone. Azure Blade listened on the side and nodded silently. In the end, he said, to be able to attack you from behind before you could react, this boss movement speed must be very fast. Yes, yes. Hans nodded excitedly. He was full of admiration for Azure Blade. You're a warrior. Killing you with one stab means that the damage isn't low. However, it's very likely that it's a backstab skill. After thieves advance into the assassin class, the backstab damage will increase, and there's a chance that it will ignore defense. Although it's an NPC, it still has to follow the class settings. However, the skill that the system gave it should be very proficient. If it's a backstab, then the damage from the front might not be that scary. Azure Blade continued to analyze. Hans continued to be in awe. As for the other point in his mind, he didn't say it out loud. An assassin has a higher chance of dropping equipment or skills. Could it be that the heavens are helping us and preparing to give us an anti-stealth skill? His hands turned soft, and he grew more and more confident in Jian Nanyu and the others. These 7 people had ulterior motives, but they did not show it and continued forward. However, because their hands were weak, they slowed down their speed. The people from Child Elite Group had gradually caught up. For example, Gu Fei and Sword Demon, the 2 faster ones, had already met up. Moreover, they knew that Jian Nan and the others were not far in front of them. If they quickened their pace, they might be able to see them. Although Imperial Sky Divine Cry was fast, unfortunately, he did not dare to run alone. At this time, he could only follow behind Zhang Wushang slowly. He had a stomach full of resentment with nowhere to vent it. As for Han Family Young Master, he came out of the tavern and was the closest to the north gate. Although he moved slowly, he wasn't too far behind. Brother Yu rushed over from the revival point after coming online. He caught up to Han Family Young Master, and the 2 of them walked together. Let's go. Gu Fei, who was the closest to the 7 people, was eager to go up and cut the melons and vegetables. Fuck no. If you go up now, we'll have run so far for nothing. Yu Tian Shunming and Unscathed in Battle strongly objected. It wasn't because they were worried that Gu Fei wasn't strong enough, but because they were too confident in his strength. They thought that if he attacked, the 7 people would be wiped out. Then, wouldn't their running for so long be a waste? Their way of thinking was quite reverse. They weren't worried about their family's safety, but they weren't worried at all. Gu Fei said helplessly, "Then hurry up." Fuck, if it wasn't for that good-for-nothing Wushang being so slow, I would have been here a long time ago. Yu Tian Shiming was angry. If you say any more nonsense, I'll throw you out. Unscathed in Battle was also angry. Yu Tian Shiming didn't dare say anything. If Unscathed in Battle really threw him into the fog, he would become a lost marksman. Don't be in a hurry to make a move. Let's see what these guys are up to. Han Family Young Master spoke at this time. It wasn't Yu Tian Shunming and Unscathed in Battle's messy reasons. Who's with them? Brother Yu was confident in his calculations. The 7 people were definitely with the 8th person. If we get any closer, we'll be exposed, Gu Fei said. Sword Demon agreed, because the 2 of them had heard the voices in front of them. Jian Nan's group of 7 kept a low profile, but Soft Hands wasn't like that. He talked and laughed loudly. Gu Fei didn't even need to use the coordinates of the flaming shirt. He just needed to listen to his voice and he wouldn't be wrong. This reminded Gu Fei and Sword Demon not to speak rashly. At this time, they were so close that they would be heard by the other party. Although the 2 of them walked side by side, they communicated through messages. Finally, a few blurry figures appeared in front of them. It was Jian Nan and the others who stopped. Gu Fei and Sword Demon immediately stopped moving forward. They even took a few steps back and hid themselves in the thick fog. Then they heard the voice in front of them say, "They should be around here. Everyone be careful." The 2 of them heard Jian Nan's voice again. The 7 of them didn't split up. They formed a circle with their backs facing each other and surrounded Soft Hands. On one hand, they didn't give Misty Assassin Andrew Su a chance to sneak attack from behind. On the other hand, Soft Hands, who was being protected, felt comfortable from head to toe. They're looking for something. It might be a boss. At this moment, Sword Ghost sent a message. In the end, he was a veteran in the game. His judgment was still faster than Gu Fei's. "Boss!" Everyone cried out. It was obvious that they weren't a professional group. They didn't have the calmness that Jian Nan and the others pretended to have when they heard about a boss. "Can you fucking move faster?" Yutian Shenming berated and scathed in battle. "Fucking shitty warrior. What kind of shitty speed is this?" And scathed in battle even looked down on his favorite class for the boss. "Be careful. Don't let them suddenly rush over and discover us." Gu Fei messaged Sword Demon. "I know." Sword Demon replied. When Gu Fei looked back, Sword Demon was already gone. Fuck. Gu Fei couldn't help but curse in his heart. Sword Demon was already in stealth. He was a bit more difficult to deal with. They couldn't see each other in the fog. Gu Fei also couldn't feel any killing intent. The coordinates of the flaming cloak refreshed every minute. It wasn't enough for such a delicate moment. Say something, say something. Don't you talk a lot?" Gu Fei kept muttering in his heart. He was wondering why Soft Hands suddenly became quiet. Soft Hands would naturally become quiet. In such a tense moment, he didn't dare to talk nonsense to distract others. He was surrounded in the center of the circle and didn't even dare to make a sound. He looked around nervously. Gu Fei was helpless. Suddenly, Sword Demon messaged him. "Move towards XXX XXX." Gu Fei came to his senses. After Sword Demon went into stealth, he boldly walked out of the fog to directly observe the actions of those guys. At this time, he naturally saw their actions and then gave him instructions. Gu Fei moved according to Sword Demon's instructions. He was a little impatient. He actually didn't have any love for the boss. At this time, he directly rushed out and killed the 7 people. That would be great. However, sometimes he had to take care of other people's feelings. Gu Fei knew that for these online game addicts, killing a boss was more important than killing an enemy, because the probability of a boss dropping good things was much higher than a player's. They must be looking for a boss. Seeing these guys' actions with his own eyes, Sword Demon had already come to this conclusion. This made Yutian Shenming and Unscathed in Battle even more anxious. Yutian Shenming wanted to whip Unscathed in Battle faster, like whipping a horse. Han family, young master and brother, you were much calmer. They continued to rush forward at a moderate pace. Brother, you flipped through the records of the boss situation in Xia Fog City and realized that there was pitifully little information about this main city. This was all because of the fog. Sword Demon paid attention to the 7 people's actions and also looked around nervously. He also wanted to know where the boss was. Over there. Sword Demon suddenly saw a black shadow flash past from the corner of his eye. He suddenly turned his head, but it was already gone. Jianan Yu and the others observed from all angles and didn't miss this moment. Over there. The 3 people who noticed this direction shouted at the same time. The 7 of them maintained their formation and moved in this direction. The scenery slowly passed through the fog and appeared in front of them. However, The shadow that flashed past had already disappeared. Pay more attention, Jian Nanyu said. The 6 of them nodded. They didn't show any signs of nervousness. They just calmly observed their surroundings. Sword Demon couldn't help but admire them. In terms of temperament, these guys were true experts. Hey, you guys are just talking nonsense. Have you guys not told me your location in a long time? At this time, Han Family Young Master said in the channel. Oh, Sword Demon responded and immediately reported his coordinates. Now that he had taken over this job, he could see it more clearly than Gu Fei. Brother, you and I will be there soon, Han Family Young Master replied. Fuck, Young Master is already here. Go die. Yutian Shenming scolded and scathed in battle. He's close. Unscathed in battle was also helpless. What's the situation? Han Family Young Master asked. Jian Nanyu and the others are loitering around the coordinates XXX. Just now, a very fast shadow flashed past. It should be the boss, Sword Demon said. So you're saying that we can confirm that the boss is there? Han Family Young Master asked. I'm sure. Sword Demon nodded. With such fast movement speed, if it wasn't the boss, then it was the GM. That's enough. Qianli, do it, Han Family Young Master said. How despicable. Gu Fei sighed. After finding out the boss's location, he killed them and then slowly killed the boss. How could this person be so despicable? Gu Fei thought like this, but he didn't have any mental baggage. He had been waiting for a long time to make his move. He grabbed the Night Stream light sword and prepared to rush out. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew past him. The extremely agile Gu Fei immediately turned around. The dark gray shadow was already behind him. Gu Fei didn't have time to think as he pushed his sword out to meet the gray shadow. A large force struck the sword and Gu Fei was instantly sent flying. Chapter 436. System bosses always belong to the general public, and not a specific person. As such, although Wandering Bladesman's group was clearly aiming for the boss and Gu Fei's group was aiming for Wandering Bladesman, it didn't affect the boss attacking Gu Fei first. Everyone was also blindly wandering around the area. Southern Azure's Word's group of 7 stood in a circle with their backs facing each other. Sword Ghoul was in stealth mode. Gu Fei was the only one standing so arrogantly in the fog. If the boss didn't stab him, it would be a disgrace to the system's high intelligence. NPCs wouldn't show any killing intent, so when the Misty Assassin pounced on Gu Fei from behind, he didn't notice it at all. As an assassin, it was very good at hiding itself. It moved at such a high speed without making a sound. However, because it was moving too fast, there was a flaw. The high-speed movement caused the air to flow, which was commonly known as wind. Perhaps to a normal player, this bit of wind was nothing, but to Gu Fei, he was sharp enough to notice it. He nimbly turned around and blocked the attack. Against Gu Fei, an NPC with no murderous intent actually had an innate advantage in ambushing him. Slowly walking up to him and stabbing him in the back, the effect might be even better than what it was doing now. Unfortunately, the NPC designer probably didn't think of this. The Misty Assassin's attack didn't succeed, so it turned around and disappeared into the fog. Gu Fei blocked the attack, but he couldn't negate the force of the attack. His entire body was sent flying, and he also turned into a black shadow, flying in the fog. There! 3 of Wandering Bladesman's group of 7 who could see this direction shouted. Everyone turned their heads and looked in that direction. Indeed, they saw a shadow quickly rush out of the fog. It didn't look like it was running, but flying. Be careful! Wandering Azure Sword shouted. The 7 of them rotated in a circle, with him facing the shadow. The knight cast Blessing of Endurance on him, and the 2 priests prepared to heal him. Wandering Azure Sword raised his shield in front of him. He wanted to take this opportunity to see just how high the Misty Assassin's damage was. In the end, the black shadow did not fly all the way to them. It had already fallen halfway. Furthermore, no matter how one looked at it, it did not look like it was going to charge over and attack them. This was because its butt was actually facing Jian Nanyu and the others. After the man landed on the ground, he staggered a few steps before he managed to steady himself. Then he turned around and waved at the others. Don't panic, it's me, it's me. Fuck! The 7 of them shouted in unison. At the same time, Glue's arrows and fiery cloak spells had already been blasted out. Gu Fei darted out of the way. Blackwater also wanted to rush out but was stopped by Jian Nan. Don't mess up the formation. One of the 7 core members immediately shouted, he's not a boss. A boss isn't like this. Jian Nan said without turning his head. He's not a boss. He's better than a boss. His hands turned soft, and he was confused. He did not understand the profound meaning behind Jian Nanyo's words. The person in front of him had a smile on his face. He wore a black mage robe and held a sword in his hand. He had dodged the arrows and spells with great agility. Jian Nan suddenly understood. This wasn't a boss, he was a monster. Bosses at least had a class system. What was up with this guy? It was impossible for Glue and Fiery Cloak to only attack in one wave. Arrows and spells came one after another. However, in the face of 2 attacks, Gu Fei was very calm. He casually waved his sword and dispelled the attacks. When Fiery Cloak cast a large area of effect spell, he would move and close in on the circle of 7 people. Tighten up. Jian Nan suddenly ordered. He remembered that Gu Fei could teleport. If he suddenly flew into the gap between them and cast 900 degrees dual flame flash, everyone would be turned into ashes. Even if they thought their health was high, don't forget that it was 900 degrees. It was 2.5 circles. Half of them would be hit by his dual flame flash 3 times. How could anyone survive? Everyone understood what he meant, and immediately moved closer to each other. Their main targets were Glue and Flaming Cloak anyway, so they just needed to give the 2 of them enough space to escape. So they squeezed back to back. The one in the middle felt his hands go soft, and was a little out of breath. Jian Nan looked back at him. Hold on. He nodded with determination in his eyes. He felt that the time to test himself had finally come. Gu Fei also stopped in his tracks when he saw the other party's actions. Indeed, his original plan was to use dual flame flash to deal with the other party in one go after closing in. He didn't expect his plan to be seen through by the other party, and the other party had squeezed out the space first, so he had to kill them one by one from the periphery. Just when Gu Fei was about to attack again, he suddenly heard a shout, "Behind you!" Gu Fei was shocked. He knew that the assassin was behind him again. This must be a notification from the sword demon. As soon as he turned around, he saw the gray shadow rushing out of the fog and stabbing at Gu Fei. This time, he could see clearly that the misty assassin's movement speed was much faster than Swift Slender Waist Dance. It was definitely a strong boss. Gu Fei quickly moved a few steps to the side. The misty assassin was already in front of him. It waved its arm and stabbed forward. It was a dull and gray dagger. However, this time, Gu Fei was prepared. It wasn't hard to block this attack. The opponent didn't seem to use much strength this time. It immediately retracted its hand after the attack failed. It suddenly flipped into the air and waved its arm. In the eyes of a normal person, everything was dazzling. However, Gu Fei's eyesight was far better than a normal person's. He could clearly see where the opponent's attack came from. He flicked his wrist and raised his sword into the air. The sword flowers collided with the opponent's attack. With a series of clanging sounds, the attack was completely blocked. Although Gu Fei's attacks weren't as fast as the misty assassin's, his technique was much better than this rigid robot. The direction of each stab was adjusted in the most concise way. In summary, the misty assassin's attack speed was fast and the range was large. On the other hand, Gu Fei's attack speed was slow and the range was small. Therefore, in the end, the time taken for each attack was almost the same. No one could do anything to the other. In reality, Gu Fei had a way to pierce through the opponent's attack. However, the problem was that this wasn't a fight between real people. It was a boss. In a fight between real people, a single stab to the throat would end the opponent's life. Now that he was facing a boss, it didn't matter where the stab landed. It was impossible to instantly kill the boss. Moreover, the system NPCs wouldn't retreat just because they were hit. Next, Gu Fei could only be strangled by the opponent's beautiful dagger rain. Therefore, he could only fight head-on with his opponent. This was a low-level fight, but in the eyes of outsiders, it was incomparably exciting. Both sides brandished their weapons and exchanged countless blows in an instant. The misty assassin's attack came to an abrupt stop. In midair, it borrowed strength from somewhere and suddenly flew back. When it landed on the ground, it had already disappeared into the fog. Gu Fei wiped his sweat. Although it was only a short fight, it consumed a lot of energy. His left hand reached out and pulled an arrow from his right shoulder. He threw it to the ground and turned around to face the 7 people. Just as Gu Fei was being attacked by the misty assassin, Flaming Cloak and Glue also wanted to take advantage of the situation, but they were stopped by Jian Nan. He was worried that this attack would attract the boss's aggro, and the misty assassin that was originally attacking Gu Fei would pounce on them instead. Gu Fei was already very scary. Now that the boss was also attracted, wouldn't it be suicidal? Hearing this, the others felt that it was reasonable. In the end, Flaming Cloak released a small fireball, and Glue released a tracking arrow. Both attacks were low damage but foolproof. They wouldn't miss the boss's attack. They wanted to use this opportunity to interfere with Gu Fei and help the boss. However, Gu Fei completely ignored them and focused on dealing with the misty assassin. His intention to interfere with the boss was obviously not achieved. Although this round was over, Gu Fei knew that he was in a very bad situation. It could be said that he was surrounded by enemies. I can't be so arrogant anymore, Gu Fei thought, and temporarily gave up on the idea of dealing with the 7 people. He turned around and ran into the fog. This might not matter to the boss, but at least he wouldn't be harassed by these 7 people. If he kept using small fireballs and tracking arrows, no matter how low his damage was, he wouldn't be able to endure it. After hiding in the fog, Gu Fei took a piece of bread and ate it while thinking about how to deal with the misty assassin. This guy moved quickly and attacked quickly, but if he was willing to face Gu Fei head-on, Gu Fei felt that he would eventually find a way to deal with it. The problem was that this guy was currently in the fog. If he suddenly appeared and attacked, he wouldn't be able to immediately retreat. If this continued, Gu Fei felt that he still couldn't afford it. In the end, he was also a human. He wasn't a tireless, programmed robot that would never be careless. Be careful, they're moving in the direction you're retreating. Sword Demon warned. You be careful too, Gu Fei said. When Sword Demon warned him while in stealth, those guys definitely knew that there was already a thief in stealth, but they didn't make a sound. It was probably because it was a sudden sound and they didn't hear Sword Demon's position. At this time, they must be 120% focused. As long as Sword Demon made a slight opening, they would definitely blast him out. Gu Fei's small piece of bread didn't have any effect when he saw a group of people in the fog. He knew that those guys were coming over and immediately dodged. What's the situation? On this side, Han family young master and brother Yu finally arrived and immediately asked, "Be careful. The boss is nearby, be careful of it attacking you." Gu Fei warned. "No way. We just arrived and they're already attacking us? Jian Nan Yu and those brats didn't even aggro them?" Han family young master said. After a moment of silence in the channel, Sword Demon said, "Qianli is aggroing them." "Wahahaha, you really are an expert. How about it? Are you going to solo the boss again?" Han family young master's words were filled with mockery. From Gu Fei's warning just now, he could tell that Gu Fei probably wouldn't be able to win against the boss this time. As soon as this message was sent, there were 2 hurried ping-pang sounds in the fog in front of them. Han family young master and brother Yu turned their heads and saw a black figure fly out. This time, Gu Fei didn't think about standing firm. After taking a few steps back, he fell on his back at the feet of Han family young master and brother Yu. TSK. Experts are really different, huh? Can you still charge or charge backwards? Han family young master said to brother Yu. You're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.